Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third and final day of the Monterey Bay DART Symposium. Excited to welcome you back to another great day of programming. Let's jump to the next slide. Oops. Work out a few little bugs here. Hang on one second. Great. So first, I'd like to thank all of our event sponsors, in particular, Central Coast Marketing Team and Santa Cruz County Bank. Thanks to everyone for making this event possible. Let's jump to the next slide. And definitely want to thank the planning committee. All these people spent many months working on pulling this incredible agenda together. And I know all of them, like myself, will probably be sleeping a lot this weekend. So thanks to everyone who helped make this happen. Next slide. So this event has covered a lot of ground so far. For those of you who were with us from the beginning, day one, we looked at security and the many opportunities there are to work with our partners in the Department of Defense. And we had that amazing tour of Dr. Ray Bittner's facility, the Slammer facility, which provides a really fascinating way for people to partner and test new technologies with Dr. Bittner's team there. And then yesterday we spent a lot of time looking at the growing field of urban air mobility and spoke to a number of people starting companies in that space, saw a lot of exciting new technologies and opportunities. And I think that for me has been the most notable quality of everything that we've seen so far in the event, just the amount of potential there is. And I think for most people who are attending, they're aware of the potential in the industry, in the DART industries, drones, automation, robotics. I think Josh Metz mentioned earlier on day one that the DART team was working with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership to put together a white paper on the drone opportunities in the forestry industry. And it was one of the main focuses of the paper was looking at what jobs exist in forestry involving drones. And it was really kind of a crystal ball activity because a lot of those jobs just don't exist right now. So really it was like the Minority Report where we were trying to predict what is gonna be coming down the pike, because this really is, this is new ground. So, I think that the potential for everyone at who's attending the event to get involved in these new opportunities. And we heard from Joby the amazing opportunities that they have in their growing manufacturing facility. There's a huge opportunity for all of us in the Monterey Bay region to partner with companies like Joby. Chancellor Larive on day two of the event outlined our plans for developing a research park at the MBEST facility. And we're really looking to that as a future hub for partnerships and cooperation amongst our many educational facilities, as well as governor and industry partners. So as that comes online, we're looking at a lot of really exciting work that's going to bring people together, and we hope that you will join us in developing those opportunities here. Today, we are going to be turning our attention to the environment, and obviously this is a huge topic, and we admittedly are only going to be skimming the surface of what is probably one of the defining topics of our generation. But again, many opportunities and activities going on in the area around the environment, from agriculture to coastal science, forestry, climate change research. It's all happening here. There are companies working in that area. There's a lot of researchers doing exciting new work. So again, we hope that you'll get some inspiration and insight. And then we'll also join us this afternoon at the Airspace Integration live tour that Chris Bly is going to be leading. So I am excited to move forward with the program here. So we are going to start with a keynote from John McMillan, who's the Vice Chancellor for Research at UC Santa Cruz. Then we're going to have a panel on forestry and wildfire, which is obviously something that we're all very concerned about here in the state of California. After that, there's going to be a panel on education and workforce development. So looking at ways that we are training the next generation of workers in this area. And then finally, we're going to have a panel on innovation and entrepreneurship. So looking at the infrastructure that's supporting new developments and new companies and research in this area. And then finally, we are going to be welcoming Dr. Glenda Humiston from UC Agriculture and Natural Resources. Who's going to be talking a little bit about resiliency and climate change in the work that they're doing there. And then again, finally, we hope that many of you will be able to join us at Airspace Integration down in La Selva Beach. So I am very honored to welcome Dr. John McMillan, the Interim Vice Chancellor for Research and also a professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at here at University of California, Santa Cruz. His research laboratory focuses on the discovery and characterization of biologically active molecules from microorganisms. His research has focused predominantly on the therapeutic areas of infectious disease and oncology, combining phenotypic screening, isolation, and mechanism of action studies towards the discovery of more than 100 new natural products. His work in the area of oncology has yielded a first-in-class inhibitor in hypoxia inducible factor 2 that is currently approved for the treatment of VHL disease. Dr. McMillan holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of California, Davis, and a BS in chemistry from the University of Iowa. And he was a postdoctoral research associate at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And just prior to moving to UC Santa Cruz, he was on faculty at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. So I am very pleased to turn the floor over to Dr. McMillan.
Good morning, and thank you for the very nice introduction and the opportunity to be here today. So, kind of as you heard in that introduction, my research work deals very much at the molecular level and the things that we can't see with the naked eye. But at the same time, a lot of the aspects of how to detect things, how to acquire data, how to analyze data are common across a lot of the areas that you've been talking about over the last few days in drone automation and robotic technologies. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening here at UC Santa Cruz from a pretty high level, but then go into a few specific examples. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you'll be able to see my slides here in a second. All right, if anybody doesn't see my slides moving forward, please let me know. So I really want to focus on innovation, and innovation, as in a lot of university, is really the driver of the way we think about moving our research programs forward. And for those that aren't very familiar with a lot of the research programs at UCSC, I wanted to start with a few examples that have absolutely nothing to do with drones and robotics, but I think they're a really clear example about the way that UC Santa Cruz thinks about big problems. And I think there's going to be a lot of corollaries as we move into drones and robotics and automation. And the first example that I really want to start with is really the history of innovation UC Santa Cruz has had in the area of genomics. And that goes back to kind of the early 2000s and even earlier, when UC Santa Cruz was fundamental in kind of outlining the process to establish the Human Genome Project. And we're very critical thought leaders in how we were going to go about that as a nation to not only acquire the data, but how to assemble the data. And it was through that process that UC Santa Cruz really gained an international leading reputation in the area of genomics. And we're the group that was highly responsible, David Hausler and others, for actually doing the assembly and taking all of the bits and pieces that other groups were acquiring and doing and developing the informatics approaches to assemble, which at the time was an incredibly difficult challenge. And as an outgrowth of that, we've developed a lot of tools that are at the forefront of genomic science today. The Ucsc Genome Browser, for example, is one of the most utilized tools in all of biological sciences. You know, as an outgrowth of a lot of those things, and what happens in almost any situation where you start to develop some expertise, other avenues have grown out of that. And now moving past just the data analysis side, some really beautiful work by Dave Deemer and Mark Akeson here at UC Santa Cruz did some fundamental work in developing a new type of sequencing technology called nanopore sequencing that has some really incredible strengths and opportunities, one of the most important of which is the ability to miniaturize. So what you're, sorry about that. What you're looking at on the screen here is a very small MinION, which is a sequencing device that can be taken out into the field. And you can start doing genome sequencing in real time in very remote locations. And this technology is going to be very groundbreaking when you think about starting to move into remote environments like Antarctica or others where you would want to be doing sequencing in the field. You can think about integrating these sorts of technologies with automation, where you would be able to do real-time monitoring of infectious disease and other sorts of circumstances like that. And I think one of the things that this highlights, and is going to be a continual theme for the way UCSC thinks about its research, is there's a problem with detection, there's a problem with data analysis, and how you move those things through. And I think the third and really vital component, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is anytime you're thinking about science, you're thinking about big data, you're thinking about observations, there's a social implication to those. And UC Santa Cruz has been a longtime leader in thinking about the social implications of all kinds of situations, but particularly as we're moving into a technological age, thinking about the social implications of technology. A second area where UC Santa Cruz has played a very critical and really fascinating role in innovation is in the area of planetary sciences. And the number of examples that I could list in this area are quite numerous. I'm just going to mention kind of two examples at the moment. And one of these is based on what started out as a failure, but ends up as a great success. And that goes to the Hubble Space Telescope. And when some of you probably remember better than others, but when the Hubble Space Telescope was first launched, the unfortunate aspect of it is that the images were blurry, as can be seen on the left-hand image. And Sandy Faber, who is one of the world's leading astronomers here at UC Santa Cruz, was the leader of the team that went in and tried to understand what was going wrong with the Hubble Space Telescope and figured out the aperture issues with the lenses, and was able to come up with a solution that could be implemented in space, and was able to fix the wide field camera so that it could be utilized to really revolutionize our ability to understand what's happening throughout the universe. The image on the right is it is an artistic rendition of some beautiful work done by really a rising superstar in the field of astronomy, Ryan Foley. This is showing the gravitational waves when two neutron stars come together. The work that he did in this particular space won the Breakthrough Prize in Science from Science Magazine in 2017. But the reason why I want to highlight this is this was detected using a telescope where they knew that an event might be coming for a long period of time, and they really had to develop the tools to capture about 1.2 seconds of data that they might never be able to observe again, and then spent a long period of time doing the data analysis. And again, as we're thinking about automation, as we're thinking about drones and robotics, again, the theme of the ability of developing detectors and tools to detect the sorts of information we want, and then on the back end, the tools to analyze data, oftentimes in an automated fashion, in a quick fashion, is going to be really critical. One last example that I could mention is the work done by Xavier Prochaska, who uses all kinds of observational tools to detect gas in the outer systems and in the galaxy to understand all kinds of features about the origins of planets and the origins of the universe. Why I mention X is he really is a leader in the data analysis of all of the accumulation of information from telescopes throughout the world. And he's now turned his attention to the oceans and much more local and in terms of climate change. And he's using the same sorts of approaches, the tools that he's developed and the skill that he has in artificial intelligence data analysis to really start looking at climate change and using drone footage and others to be driving that forward. And then I just mentioned this briefly, but I want to come back to this. And I don't think we can undersell the importance of thinking about the societal implications of technology. I think we've seen examples of that have emerged throughout the last 2 years, where there's been changes in how we view technology, how we use technology, access to technology. So I think one really critical and important component that UC Santa Cruz wants to play an important role in is how we utilize these new technological innovations in a way that is equitable to all, and how it's going to drive and change different fields, and how we're not going to leave people behind as we move that forward. And a couple examples of places where this is going to work: our Institute for Social Transformation works quite heavily with Citrus on a number of areas around ag tech, for example. I think it's fairly unusual that a School of Social Sciences is going to be help driving a program such as ag tech. And in a very unusual, something that's quite unusual compared to other places, our agroecology program is housed in the School of Social Sciences. And almost every other university in the country, that's going to be in a biological science and a veterinary science and a School of Agriculture. But we have embedded our agroecology program in the School of Social Sciences, which really changes how we approach problems in thinking about food security, ag tech, and others. So with that kind of as a backdrop, these are the same, the way we're looking at using automation, drones, robotics really takes the same flavor. And it's a lot of the same, if it's not the same people, as people from the same departments that have driven a lot of the really great work in these other areas. And I kind of break it down in a very simplistic, and this is my own interpretation as a non automation person, to break it down into kind of 3 areas: new technology for the data acquisition, and obviously the drones themselves, new technology there, but a lot of what we're talking about is tools for detecting different sorts of information, and how are we going to develop and miniaturize those detectors to acquire the information we want. We also know we're going to be generating data in real time, in scale and scope that we haven't dealt with before, and how are we going to build new ways of analyzing that data in real time and be able to implement the results of that data in a way that's quite quick and reliable. And then to come back to that last point again is, and how are we going to play a role in developing the appropriate social framework for how data is going to be used and how decisions are going to be made. This is always a problem, but I think it continues to be, as we have more data, as we're observing more things, that social framework is going to be absolutely critical, particularly as we're taking a look from the perspective of everything being equitable. So with those kind of backdrops in mind, I'm going to just mention a few projects of where we're going. And these are all projects that had seed funding that came out of Citrus here at UC Santa Cruz. And you know, as we're all quite aware, it's quite nice that we've had a couple of days of rain here, but there with the severe droughts that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years, and the lack of snowpack and other things, we're all very concerned about measuring the fate of our water. And we definitely think about it from the perspective of drinking water and others, but we also have to look and think about how the water in the snowpack affects plants and the physical structure of the soil. So in a collaborative project between Michael Lowick, who's in environmental studies, and Margaret Zimmer, who's in earth and marine sciences, they're asking questions about the snowpack and how it affects the physical soil structure, particularly looking at evapotranspiration, so the water loss from leaves and soils. So they're using drone footage to generate spatial heat maps to look at the ET from different shrub species in open soil prior to snow in relation to how deep the snow is. And this is really going to be critical for thinking about our watersheds that have very critical plants that help with soil erosion and other issues. So again, this comes back to developing tools to be able to measure the water loss, and some of those exist, but there's always room for more growth. And then the data analysis part. And lastly, how is the information from this going to be utilized by the legislature or by others to make decisions on how to protect our watersheds moving forward? In a little bit of a similar vein, but slightly differently, I want to talk about the work of Steve McGuire and Greg Gilbert, who are looking at the ability of using automation and drones to look at plant disease. This starts with the work from Greg's lab. So that Greg is also in environmental studies, and Greg is one of the world's experts in looking at how when plants grow together, how that the benefit of plants growing together. And they've done some really beautiful studies over the years that as you have more diversity in plants, they perform better, they have better biomass, and this interplay between different species, the microbes, the bacteria, the fungi in the soil, and the healthiness of the entire community play a role in helping actually continue to drive diversity. And this is obviously critically important as we look at a lot of forests and other areas that are being impacted by forest fires and other situations. So by utilizing drone-based multispectral sensors to observe these plants in high density environments, they're trying to use machine learning to look at both the plant diversity and use that to detect disease outbreaks that are going to lower the overall phylogenetic diversity within different environments. And again, all of these tools are being done in a way when we're looking at the environment, we can collect information, but ultimately we need to act on that information. So the information we're going to be developing in all of these programs really need to be used to figure out how we're going to have direct intervention to limit the effects of climate change. And the UC system, the state of California, is really leaders in this particular area. And it's the data that we're going to be able to gather using these new technologies that are going to be able to help lead to policy changes that will hopefully benefit and reduce some of the issues around climate change. Lastly, we heard about wildfire earlier. Obviously, in our own area, the devastating effects of the CZU fire, as well as others throughout the area and the state, continue to have long-term implications. As we have rain now, we now have to worry about mudslides and others. As is becoming an emerging theme within the entire UC system, really trying to develop automation and drone technology to be able to better predict and respond to wildfires is a critical component. So Katia Braska, Kaizu, Ricardo Sanfelice have a project going on right now to develop a low-cost network of both ground and UAV-based sensors to continuously collect data that can help improve the accuracy of wildfire risk assessment. And again, we're not the only group doing this, but as everybody has different approaches, the ability to feed in real-time data to decision makers is going to be quite critical. I think that the amount of data that's going to start flowing around this particular topic is going to be quite immense, and I think that it's going to be an area where some of the really the best people in the area of AI and others are going to be necessary to take this data and be able to develop the right models that are going to be useful in moving things forward. So those are the three examples that I wanted to mention real quick. What I want to do, if I have time, I think I still have a few minutes left. I want to mention something that you might hear about a little bit more from others over the rest of the day. And this is an initiative that, again, has come out of Citrus and UCSC called CIDR. It's the UCSC Citrus Initiative on Drone Education and Research. And it's been led by Becca Fenwick, Justin Cummings, and Michael. And this is really an opportunity to think about how we can start using drones for research. But I think that a very important and critical component to all of this is really the educational component and training the next generation of individuals that are going to play a critical role in this space. There is maybe not a ton of jobs in this area at the moment, but I think we all see the future holds tremendous opportunity for for this sort of work, and trying to develop a diverse workforce in this area is really critical and important to UC Santa Cruz. So since how much time do I have left? My timer didn't get started on time. I still have enough time. I'm going to show this 6-minute video that was really nicely done. And I think that this does a much better job than I possibly could of explaining the goals of CIDR. And we're going to see some friendly faces, I think, in this video, in addition to the people from UC Santa Cruz. So hopefully this starts.
Currently, there's like it's almost like a renaissance in aviation, where it seems like anything is possible.
As the drone industry increases, the application of these drones increase, and people want to use them more, we're going to see more and more specific jobs that are drone pilots specifically.
Drones are great because it's a new tool that we're going to be able to use to do all sorts of, whether it's mapping or videography, surveying of infrastructure. I mean, it's a tool that we can use. And I think what's most important for young people to understand is that as you're getting your degree and as you're in school, try to pick up as many tools that you can apply across different disciplines.
It became very clear to me there were a lot of people, both faculty and students on campus, who were either working with drones or were interested in working with drones. And there are a bunch of projects on campus that had been developing sensor and drone systems that allow them to look at the conditions that cause wildfires and help to mitigate wildfires when they start. So we knew it was something that was going on, and we wanted to bring more attention to that and hopefully focus resources in a way that more of that work can be done.
Here in California, we've had a number of wildfires, and some of those have occurred in areas where we've been conducting these flights over multiple years. And so now there's an opportunity for us to look at, as these areas regenerate, do we see the same species coming back, or do we see new species coming in? And is that a result of climate change, or is that some other factor? Maybe they're invasive species, but having this data and information before disturbance and then after disturbance provides us with a real opportunity of understanding how these ecosystems change. But having background in biology is also really critical to being able to understand what's happening on the ground and being able to answer these critical questions.
So the fire services, working with them, we've identified 3 critical use cases. One is prescribed fire, and it's a huge land management tool, and also a tool for fighting wildfires. Then the second application is tactical resupply. So this is bringing stuff to guys on the front line. Well, if we want to deliver something as simple as a hot dinner to a crew of firefighters, just throw it on here and take off from a fixed location, bring it to the drop point, put it on the ground. And then finally, eventually we want to get to being able to actually put out spot fires by dropping, a payload of some kind of retardant on them. We're not super focused on that right now. We want to focus on those other 2 applications first.
This is the kind of equipment that is going to revolutionize the way we fight fires, and it's going to require this entire new generation of people to pilot these things.
Speaking to the youth and just choosing an industry that's really gonna be always changing and evolving. And I guess that's whether it's drones or traditional aviation or even aviation in general.
You know, one part of it is being competent around operating the drone, uploading the software, uploading the maps. But then after you get that data, you need to use other software to stitch all those pictures together so that you get the map of the area that you've flown. And then you also can use GIS for in a number of different capacities to further analyze that data.
I think one of the most exciting opportunities, we have a lot of students who come in and they want to gain skills for entrepreneurial reasons too. They see an opportunity for them to apply drone technology in a new field, or also to innovate UAVs and drones themselves. So figure out new systems and new sensors that can be carried by drones.
Parallel Flight is not a typical drone company. We act as an OEM and a drone as a service company. So that really opens up the door for a lot of different roles. So of course, on the R&D side, there's your typical roles, right? Mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. You know, moving beyond that as well, there's drone pilots, people who are actually going to go out in the field and fly these systems, which I think would be pretty fun. You know, if you gave me a choice at the beginning of the day, like I can go answer my emails, which is what I normally do, or go fly that. Like I'd choose to go fly that because it would be a lot more fun.
I really enjoy working on these projects. You know, it fulfills like the science geeky tech side of my soul because I get to play with electronics and geek out on different types of cameras and different types of drones and what they can do, which is always super fun. But it also really speaks to being able to make a difference, because the data that we're getting and the skills that we're able to give people through training is going to make a difference to how people manage the landscape and manage our ecosystems in the future, which is fabulous.
So what you're seeing today is really the start of what is going to be an unmanned revolution in technology.
Also being able to use drones is going to be a multiplier for them. So I've got these skills and I know how to use drones to apply to this field that maybe it hasn't even really been applied to yet. So there's just a whole range, I think, of skills that students can gain at this point as this industry really develops. So they're not coming in and just learning something that's static. I think they're coming in, they have an opportunity to really help innovate as things develop.
Oops. Well, thanks for letting me play that. And I think they, as I said, they do a way better job of speaking about this than I do. And so just a little bit more on CIDR, and this is my last slide, but I would also like to say, you know, I believe that Chancellor Rodrigo spoke yesterday about some of our plans for our MBES space. And I'm very pleased to say that CIDR is the first UCSC group to move into our existing facility down in Marina. So we're really happy to have them starting off leading the charge down there. And yeah, I'm not going to read through all these 5 pillars, but you know, I do think that a really beautiful aspect that Becca, Michael, and Justin laid out when they started talking to us about CIDR was really the experiential learning aspect. And you know, we have an opportunity to, at the beginning of a new field, to really bring in underrepresented groups in STEM to an area that they can thrive and be leaders and drive that field. So we're really excited about the direction of this particular program and how it's going to interact and engage with a wide variety of different areas. So really appreciate and greatly admire the leadership that the 3 of them have shown in this area. So just, you know, we hope to be able to capitalize on our MBES facility and be able to continue to drive many of these areas forward as we continue to have more faculty that show interest around the questions that can be supported by drones and other sorts of automation. And we're really excited about what the future holds. So with that, I will stop. And if there's any time left, I can try to answer any questions, or I can probably more applicably drive you to the people that can answer the questions for real. Thanks.
Thank you, John. That was great. And selfishly, thank you for highlighting the citrus work there. One question that I have, if you could talk a little bit about how you might recommend a company would go about partnering with researchers at UCSC if they have a challenge in this area that they're looking to find solutions to.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Number one, I think Andrea Pesci is here still on the phone, and I think you would want to start that process by reaching out to Andrea, and she would be kind of the key person to start that process. And you know, as with most university websites, it's not always easy to maneuver through and find the right people based on word descriptions, but we have a pretty good working knowledge of who the different people in the different groups are. So reach out and we can put you in contact with people of mutual interest.
Excellent, thank you. Let me check the chat, see. Andrea has put her email in the chat for everyone if you're interested. Great, and any other questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat. All right, well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, John, for that inspiring presentation on the work that UCSC is doing in this area and opportunities. I'd add also that companies who are interested in getting access to a new growing diverse workforce of trained students, don't hesitate to reach out to John and his team as well. All right.
Quiet
So,
group this morning.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, no, I was just going to say a quiet group this morning. That was so great.
Indeed. Excellent. Well, we are going to move on in the program. Next up, we have a panel that's looking specifically at forestry and wildfire, which John very teed up very well. And Josh Metz is going to be leading this discussion. I'll just add that I think that DART, we've come up with the secret tool to fight wildfires, which is spend 12 months planning an event with outdoor meetings, and you will bring 3 days of rain down on yourself. So we'll have to look into how accurate that is for next year's event. So I'll turn the floor over to Josh and the panel.
Great, thank you, Michael. And thank you, Vice Chancellor McMillan, for that overview of the groundbreaking work, the tradition at UC Santa Cruz, and drawing the connections. I really, with a number of the professors that have joined us throughout the symposium, who have provided much of that kind of historical context for innovation, and how those breakthroughs have happened over the years, it really helps to contextualize the arena that we're focused on, and really the youthful stage of its development and the potentially long range and significant amount of innovation yet to come. So yeah, it's an honor to be back with you all and to be moderating this particular panel on forestry and wildfire. We've got an excellent set of panelists spanning the spaces of, particular tech innovation right here in the Monterey Bay region with Joshua Resnick and his team at Parallel Flight. We've recently made a nice connection with Cassie Meeks and her team at Drone Seed up in Seattle, who are focused on rapidly scaling reforestation from seed to drone for post-wildfire recovery. And our man Rodrigo Nieto from the Naval Postgraduate School, who may well be joining us midstream here, as he is a busy guy, and he let me know just a few minutes that he would be joining us just about at 9:45. So we'll make room for him to join. And then Lee Coleman with Ember Flash, which is a recent startup here again in the Santa Cruz area, looking more on the AI and software side of improving response, improving information delivery to be more focused with response times and resources in wildfire applications. So, I don't think it needs much more familiarization for all of us here in California, certainly for those in the Santa Cruz area who lived through last fire season last year, where we were all scrambled out of town due to the SCZ fires up in the hills above us. This issue of wildfire, management and response is not going away. And so there are a number of different strategies being developed to leverage these emerging technologies, drones themselves, but also, as Professor McMillan mentioned, the software and the AI side being critical to improving those response times. So our panelists will be able to talk a lot about that and hopefully get a lively conversation going. Maybe what I would do is now just invite each of the panelists to take a few moments to kind of introduce themselves. I know some of you have provided background slides, a few slides to support your comments, and let's just jump right into it. So maybe I'll ask Joshua Resnick, since he's our local heavy lift drone expert, and his team to take a few minutes to tell us about what is happening in parallel flight.
Hey,
Joshua.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah. So first of all, huge thanks for the invite. Glad to be here. Parallel Flight Technologies was started in late 2018 in response to the wildfire crisis. And, I connected with the head of aviation for the Department of the Interior, who's a drone expert. And, the DOI is one of the biggest drone fleets, non-military drone fleets in the world. And Mark, his name is Mark Bathrick, and Mark said to me, the thing that's missing for drones and wildfire is heavy lift, long duration solutions. And can you build that? And I'm a powertrain guy. I was at Tesla at the time working on the Tesla semi-truck program. And I said, yeah, I think we can build that. So gathered a group of engineers, and we started, a first principles approach to build long duration heavy lift drones. We have a solution now that's 10x what is possible with an electric multi-rotor. So an electric multi-rotor carrying a big payload. So what this means is, whether your drone is this big or whether your drone weighs 1,000 pounds, if it's an electric multi-rotor and it's carrying its full payload capacity, it's only going to fly about 15 minutes. Our solution will fly for 2.5 hours. So this is a 10x solution for long duration with heavy payloads. We're a team of about 14 people. We recently closed a $6.5 million kind of seed round. We've been really at this since early 2019 at full steam, and we have products that are going to be hitting the market really Q1, Q2 next year, and we're super excited to be here.
Oh, thank you, Joshua. Yeah, it's great to follow your team's development. I know that you have been part of the sort of Monterey Bay entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem now for some time, having followed your progress through things like the startup Monterey Bay challenge that they put on, the pitch competition, and the various steps, and then with your crowdsourcing approach to fundraising and all of that. So, I mean, really, it's great to see the progress that you're making. And for those of you who can join us this afternoon, you'll have a chance to see Josh and his team maybe even get their their craft up in the air for you to look at. So weather permitting, I guess, right?
Yeah, the team is going to be setting up flight operations out front around 1:30, and we'll be there all afternoon. So come by and check it out.
Excellent. Yeah. So next, I would invite Cassie Meeks from Drone Seed to join us and tell us a little bit about Drone Seed. And also, Cassie, I really like, I think relevant to the video that we showed, hearing a bit about your professional background and educational background, because I think it's a great case study in how folks might see themselves kind of merging from sort of an environmental natural resources focus into this application and private sector world. So welcome to the show, Cassie.
Thank you, Josh. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I would love to highlight my experience first before kind of jumping into Drone Seed. I have a master's in forest ecology from Oregon State University, and I studied the effects of fire severity on forest ecosystem recovery. And through that discovery, spending a lot of time in the woods, taking a lot of data, I actually fell in love with geospatial technologies and the ability to look at entire landscapes and detail through these processes. And so through that discovery, I spent actually over a decade in the geospatial industry with a company called Quantum Spatial, which is now NV5 Geospatial, where I was analyzing LiDAR and aerial imagery and using a lot of UAS platforms in that. And so a geospatial subject matter expert has spent a lot of time in LiDAR land, really understand it well. And this actually brought me to Drone Seed, and their mission to make reforestation scalable really resonated with me, with my background in forestry, that fire ecology situation that Drone Seed's really focusing on, and really just the big picture of using this technology to mitigate climate change through natural sources of carbon sequestration. And then I really have sort of the problem statement kind of queued up for Drone Seed on like really why the company was founded and really what we're driving towards. If we can kind of cue that up now.
Yes, that'll be in our slides. Doug, can we put that up on the screen, please? Excellent.
Thank you. So this really this slide cues up what Drone Seed is all about. And this graphic on the left shows how wildfires have been increasing in size and in severity over the last decade. The 10-year rolling average from the National Interagency Fire Center shows about 7 million acres are burned each year in the US and increasing. And it's true, many forests are fire adapted, but with the size and severity of fires increasing, a lot of these are stand replacing fires. It consumes the crown and soil seed bank, and this just doesn't allow for natural regeneration. It's less likely that'll happen. And a big concern is state shift from forested ecosystems to grass or shrub steppe is a concern. And so Drone Seed sort of stepped in, founded in 2016, really to develop a solution to get that appropriate seed to these areas that need it most. And these are often in remote, inaccessible locations. And then if you want to move to advance to the next slide, I kind of show the three-part solution that Drone Seed has developed. Yeah, thanks. So this is really focusing on a rapid post-fire response. We really want to be focusing on deploying seed vessels within 90 days of the fire to really maximize on this exposed soil, which is great for germinating seeds. And so our first point there is the development of seed enablement technology. So this is a fiber-based vessel that we have developed that we affectionately call the puck, because it kind of looks like a hockey puck, but it's more of a square. And so this is really a fiber-based vessel that the seeds are loaded into, and it really acts as that organic layer that's missing from post-fire landscapes. And this vessel really is designed to maximize the survival of any given seed on the landscape. And then the second part of the solution that we have developed is precision software. And so before any project is executed on, we collect the high resolution LiDAR and multispectral imagery. And we use this to identify the best places to deploying the seed vessels, microsite conditions, and kind of training the data set to really be looking for these. So using that geospatial data to locate that. Another byproduct of that is being able to operate our drones based on this LiDAR and, creating our mission plans based on the LiDAR and imagery. And the third component is our modular fleets. And so a fleet is up to 5 aircraft and a charge truck. And so there's 2 trucks, 2 trailers, and 5 to 6 drones. And so we've really pioneered these electric, and that's what the charge truck is for, is to really be setting this up in remote landscapes. And so we can be operating, it's fully electric. And so we're always charging our batteries in this charge truck. So it really allows us to increase our operational time in these remote locations. So it kind of operates like a NASCAR pit crew. After an aircraft lands, our crew then swaps up the batteries, charges in the charge truck, and then it goes off again. And so we really were one of the first, I think we were the first company to be approved by the FAA to be operating these heavy lift drones in remote locations. And so these are all custom built in our headquarters in Seattle. And really through this discovery process over the last few years since Drone Seed has really been operating, we've identified that seed is by far the limiting factor to widespread forest recovery at the scale that we really need it. And so if you'll advance to the last slide. We're really excited to announce that Drone Seed has acquired Silvaseed, which is a 130-year-old titan in the seed and seedling space. And so what we're really trying to do is provide that middle ground, that seed and the seedlings that are really necessary to be scaling up reforestation on the major scale that we need it. So now we are offering a vertically integrated reforestation services, and we're bringing technology to this. And so using technology such as UAS to really identify the location of tree mast, so we can really be identifying where we need to go collect that seed, and then again to be matching those with the fire locations that are happening to get that forest recovery kickstarted as soon as possible after a fire event. And with that, I'll kind of hand it back over to you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie. I mean, I can see a lot of folks in the chat are kind of catching what I'm also feeling and seeing myself. I mean, I love seeing the multiple parts of the business, the way that it's developed over time, and you have these various solutions to making it work. So I mean, that's really exciting stuff, and especially for this particular problem area. So I'm seeing Joshua Resnick over there taking some notes and getting excited for future collaborations, hopefully in various ways. Next, I'll just jump next to Lee Coleman to tell us a little bit about Ember Flash and what he and his team are working on. And I see that Rodrigo has joined us, and so we'll close the introductory part with some provocative comments from our futurist professor over at Naval Postgraduate School. So Lee, tell us about Ember Flash.
Thanks, Josh. Just briefly, just a little bit about my background. So I have a bachelor's degree in physics, or a bachelor's in physics and a PhD in engineering. And I've been at NASA for about 10 years. And my most recent endeavor is co-founding Ember Flash Aerospace. So Ember Flash is basically an organic organic entity that has come out of the CZU fires from last year. Most of our team members were affected directly by the CZU fires. I myself was evacuated for 6 weeks. One of our team members actually lost his home in the fires. So we're a very motivated group to try to do something about really the wildfire response side of things. So we see a lot of technologies out there, and it's great, like the stuff that Josh is doing, the stuff that Cassie is doing. These are amazing, amazing technologies that are being developed, but we want to take it a step further. We want to help bring these pieces of technology together to make sure that they can be fielded in the most effective and efficient way possible. And in order to help with both pre-fire, current, during fire response, and then post-fire response. So bringing together the data, bringing together the models, bringing together the drone technologies, the data collection, the data analysis, and bringing that into an easy to use interface and set of tools for first responders and also planners, everybody from the insurance industry to city planners and so forth. So that's really the goal of Ember Flash, is to be the integrator to really help get these technologies out in the field.
Excellent. Yeah, glad to see out of adversity, new things growing, maybe like little seedlings out of a fire scar area with your new company there. So I think there's lots of opportunity here, and we'll continue to follow that as you grow. So last but not least, I'd like to welcome Professor Rodrigo Nieto from the Naval Postgraduate School Center for Homeland Defense and Security. Rodrigo is a defense futurist, technologist, and really just a really interesting and engaging guy to have a conversation with if you can. I'm glad that you're able to join us, Rodrigo. Thank you for making the time. I'll let you do a little bit more introduction and just encourage you to pick up where our little preparatory session sort of landed on some of these topics about both the development, the potential for technological development and evolution of these tools, in going forward, as well as just the question of some of the more common use cases that people think about when they think about drones, wildfire, and response, and all that kind of stuff. So, Rodrigo.
Sure, Joe. Thank you so much. I'm here to bring some comedy relief to the panel. With that said, part of my work is to explore ways in which governmental organizations, including the Department of Defense, can accelerate the pace of innovation through better strategies, right? So what are the mechanisms that are in place so we can go to places where we're gonna go and getting there in 5 years instead of 15, right? Some of these things imply effective and deliberate choices made by decision makers, by entrepreneurs, and obviously by regulatory agencies and governments. And I would say that my interest in this field has grown, first of all, as a Californian, somebody who lives here and who's in what firefighters call the wildlife-urban interface. So this housing environment so prevalent in our beautiful state, in which we have the blessings of living in near proximity to all of the urban advantages of being a city in a beautiful place like Monterey, but at the same time, we can enjoy greenery and red oaks and forests in our backyards. That is fantastic from a quality of life point of view, except when they are burning, right? And the wildlife urban interface is part of the challenges that we are dealing with in this environment. And because of that, because of the amount of evacuations, like many of us have been close, we've had enough close calls to get this in our radar. I started exploring mechanisms and authorities and institutions, and how could we use the tools of entrepreneurship, as we have seen here with the 3 companies that are listed here. And then the final part of this equation is what could governments do to be a force multiplier instead of an obstacle in getting these technologies out. We'll probably talk more and we'll have more time. There are multiple time horizons that I'm interested. Entrepreneurs need to be in the next 9 months because that's the runway that they might have of funding before they get to the, I like to see the 5, 10, 15 years, right? And the assumption that I like to operate on when we're working in future studies analysis, right, is that with the right decision making, we can move much faster to where we want to be. And it is that my job, I think of it as keeping that horizon farther, so the people working in the today can have a partner pushing them in the direction they want to go, but they just don't have the capacity to look that far into the future. Governments, funding entities, DARPA, they are the ones who really have that opportunity to keep the eye in the 2040s, in the 2050s.
Yeah, well, thank you for that context. You definitely have an interesting job. And I think one of the things that we talked about when we got together before this was the something that you mentioned there, just the relationship of regulation, government regulation on, either, increasing or decreasing sort of opportunities and rates of innovation. And so maybe that's the topic that we could pick up on again. I know each of the panelists would have something to add to that discussion. We have plenty of time for a nice, lively conversation here. So maybe I would pass it back to Joshua and just say, in terms of how your development process has gone, what has been the experience of sort of the influence of regulation on making it easier or harder to achieve your goals and deliver outcomes?
Yeah, so it's a complex regulatory environment when you're talking about drones, especially when you're talking about heavy lift drones. So I have a feeling most of the people here are quite familiar with Part 107, which is the commercial drone pilot's license. It's fairly easy to get, and it allows you to take your drone, given that it's less than 55 pounds and meets some other requirements, to go do commercial operations with it. If your drone is more than 55 pounds, then the situation becomes much more complex in the US. There's several different pathways to getting authorization to fly that aircraft. Drone Seed is also familiar with this issue. That's just one part of the puzzle. If you look globally, for example, in Australia, it's much easier to fly heavier systems. In the EU, the pathways are also simpler. In Canada, it's also easier. The FAA is really the most stringent authority. However, that being said, they have, the FAA is looking toward fully integrating unmanned systems into the national airspace. They're focusing on the beyond visual line of sight problem right now. And, I know that they're also eyeing these heavier solutions down the road. Parallel flight is part of what's called the Beyond program, which is it's really the FAA's effort to bring unmanned systems fully into the national airspace. Through our Beyond partner, we have our COA, or Certificate of Authorization, which we use to fly. It's what will be, it's what gives us the authority to legally fly our systems. And so like later today, for example, when we're flying, it's all under our COA, which is developed through this Beyond program, part of the FAA. So the regulators are, their first objective obviously is to keep everybody safe, and also to try to bring these new technologies in. And so it's a difficult it's a difficult needle to thread. Let's just put it that way. And we all reap the benefits of the FAA every time we get on an airplane and don't die. So, they have an important job to do, and I hope over the next few years things are going to continue to accelerate towards bringing drones fully into the national airspace. So to sum it up, complex international picture. Parallel flight is, for example, we're opening an office in the EU, and we're in the process of applying for our authorization to fly there to work with some customers on the other side of the pond. Complex international patchwork of regulations. FAA is the strictest, but efforts are being made to bring drones fully into the national airspace. I know that doesn't really touch on the wildfire side of things that much, but we can return to that subject.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. Yeah, the general airspace landscape is, as you described. I think one thing that we talked about previously was just in particular around, the both public lands, public forest lands for R&D purposes, and certainly the question of, operating drones within and around, active wildfires. There are strict regulations there, but I know that Cassie, you talked about that previously with how your company has been, in doing your development process, and just that's provided, some challenges to overcome along the way.
Yeah, I can comment on that. It has been quite a few hurdles to be approved for heavy lift operations in swarm configurations with the FAA. We're really proud of our accomplishments on that and have been operating for several seasons now. Our biggest challenge currently right now is really operating with the federal government. And because fires often happen on national forests and in federal land in particular, and frankly is in biggest need of our services, drone seed services, we've actually had quite a lot of hurdles, specifically with Secretarial Order 3379, which is the basically cessation of drones on federal land. And we have been working really closely with the Department of Interior to get a waiver for that to operate on federal lands. And it's been now over a year that we've just sort of been slogging through that effort. And so any pressure that we can put on to the government to sort of help really find a pathway to the use of drones on federal land for fire aviation, as well as the recovery process is really something that we're very focused on achieving.
Yeah, I'm sure Rodrigo's taking notes for his Center for Homeland Security teams that come through the public agencies that you work with over there. And also perhaps Lee, just in terms of, thinking about how your software tool could potentially deliver, better precision information and time frame information for operations around restricted areas or different circumstances like that. Would you care to comment on any of that?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges is to get the information that we do have to the first responders, to the people who need it the most. So there's a lot of work on drones, drone technologies, and so forth. But really making sense of that data, getting it into the hands of who needs it is a challenge. Really, there's also a significant, not necessarily regulatory challenge to overcome when it comes to getting that data into the hands of the people who need it. But really, sort of a culture that needs to be addressed as well. So, sort of a not invented here sort of culture, also a culture of kind of familiarity with tools and rightly so, because this these people are in the field, they're counting on their decisions keeping people safe, protecting property, but most importantly keeping their own people out of harm's way. And so there's a challenge there to make sure that they're comfortable with the tools that they're provided.
Yeah, so that's I think that points to a couple of things that we covered earlier in the week, and especially in our first day dealing with folks down at NPS who operate the various R&D channels, the GIFIX in particular, which allows companies with new technologies to get them in front of a variety of public agencies in the development process. So, I think that's something to note. I'm sure Rodrigo could comment on that, but I did see that Joshua had some additional comments on regulation drone. He wanted to have the conversation. Joshua, you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Are we frozen up? Okay.
No, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just for the knowledge of our audience, the federal government passed a regulation saying that there was going to be no Chinese-made drones bought by any federal agency except for target practice, and that and as Cassie alluded to, that basically this was amounted to a cessation of all drone use until they sorted everything out and had a list of approved drones that could be used. Now, I think I'll just give my personal opinion here. This had a few different effects. One effect was negative, which is that we had some incredibly good drone programs, specifically DOI and Forest Service, that got grounded because they were using DJI products. On the positive side, that the intent is to get the US to make competitive drones. So I think that that's something that definitely needs to happen, and it's beginning to happen. And as a US drone manufacturer, we're making our product, a made in the USA product, but it's also very, very challenging to compete with the Chinese prices. So, it's going to be interesting going forward to see, what regulatory things can happen to support US drone manufacturers so that, we can really be competitive. And also, what can be done to kind of resurrect these programs and get them back on their feet. And I think that's starting to happen. I'm sure Cassie has some insight there as well. So I just wanted to kind of fill out some detail on that whole situation.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. And just to note, if you all can hear me, I think I've been asked to turn my camera off to keep my audio working well. So I hope you'll bear with me on that. If any of you would like to jump in following Joshua's comments there, and then I would like to ask before we, wrap the session, that we still have about 10 minutes or so about this topic of kind of workforce and jobs of the future. Both, I know the audience here and the next panel has some that'll fit well with their topic. So first, if anyone would want to follow up on Joshua's comments, feel free to do that.
Sure. I'll mention here one thing, and this is why it's so important to create spaces of exchange of information between regulatory agencies, regulators, and entrepreneurs, right? So we can discuss the value or not of the original reason for the cessation of operations in federal property. The reality is that it came with a very clear amount. I don't even want to call them unintended consequences, because they were the consequence that we were going to see, which is the complete cessation also of innovation in drone use in federal property, in federal lands, right? So this is one of those cases in which a clever, intelligent policy-making process is as important as the amazing engineering and research and development that is being, because you're not going to get one without the other. I often talk about how worlds like Formula One, the regulator agency changes something, and that immediately sparks a bunch of, triggers a bunch of creativity in Formula One teams. It's the same, right? So we don't know specifically if in this case, the FAA has been considering how they want to funnel innovation. We know of certain programs, just mentioned Beyond, for example. They have a big role to play, and it is, I think, important for us, everybody, including every citizen, to make sure that we keep the pressure on regulatory entities, so we don't destroy the amazing opportunities that we have to get things fixed exponentially, right? DroneSeed, Parallel, Ember Flash, these companies have the potential to change dramatically the picture in the West Coast, in California, in Australia, but only if they're allowed to. And from upon me, I work for the Department of Defense, so I have a vested interest. I'll say one thing, from a geopolitical perspective, if it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen somewhere else. So Josh mentioned how it's easier now to do drone research in Berlin than it is in Silicon Valley, and I'm not okay with that, right? That's another part here. We need, if we care about the US remaining a relevant player in this field, we need to make sure that regulations are written in a way that are made for the United States to maintain its leading role in novel technologies.
Yes, excellent comments, Rodrigo. Thank you for bringing that. Any Lee or Cassie, would you have anything more to say on this particular vein? Or if not, certainly, this topic of the workforce of the future, and I think for each of your companies, drawing on, a diverse sort of talent pool and educational foundation, it'd be interesting to hear about some of the characteristics of your teams, and as let's say Drone Seed, you're scaling, what are you looking for in your workforce to be able to deliver the outcomes you're looking for?
Yeah, I would love to comment on that. And we are scaling up considerably. I mean, if anyone is looking, we have a number of positions posted on our website right now, and there's going to be even more coming online. And really the finding that interface between background in natural resources, understanding of ecology and technology, that interface between the two is really important to us. And we're looking for individuals that have those two, because it's so important to be able to use technology in natural resource management, fire management, recovery, all of that. And so finding talented candidates that are really passionate about technology, geospatial sciences, UAS, and drone pilots, that are comfortable operating in remote locations, that can also lend themselves to interpreting, ecological results and interpretations, are really skills that we're looking for. So that interface between the two is critical, and I would encourage more and more students that are in natural resources to reach out and embrace technology and the value that it has in natural resource management.
Yeah, we should have invited you to a panel I was on earlier last week, all focused on this topic. So we'll definitely look forward to hearing more. Lee, did you have something to say here?
Yes, yeah. So I would say that one of the big things for us is going to be really finding people who can look across silos, who can look across technology platforms, and really see the connections and put the pieces together. Since that's really what our focus is integrating different technologies, working with partners. There's no sense in recreating something that somebody's already done quite well. And that's what our role is for integration. And it can be challenging to find people who can look big picture, but then also work across disciplines. Work hardware, work software, work AI, work with user interfaces, and bring all that together. So as far as future workforce, cross-discipline, multidisciplinary people are going to be key.
Great, thank you for those comments. Joshua, I see you have some to add here.
Yeah, so we're looking for a couple positions that we're trying to fill right now. We're looking for a firmware engineer. We're looking for an engineering director, actually, so a higher level person. And then also we're looking for interns as well. So those are a few of the open recs right now. I fully expect in 2022 to be scaling, and everything from engineering to drone pilots to sales folks and the whole gamut of everything it takes to run a business. So that's what we're looking for. One of the big applications that we have at Parallel Flight is prescribed fire. So this kind of touches the forestry side of things that Cassie was bringing up as well. So forestry related folks are important for us. Where right now we're beginning a phase 2 SBIR grant from the USDA for demonstrating large scale prescribed fire from our platform. So we're going to be doing some big burns in 2022. So that's one of the things that we're going to be staffing up for.
Excellent. So I'm hearing lots of opportunity in this space and some really exciting companies at various stages of development. So I think it characterizes well what we were hoping to do, that this is a young and emerging field with these exciting applications and hopefully a big future down the road. And so we'll look to continue following your work, each of you, and hope to stay engaged. Before we close, would anyone have any final comments or thoughts they might like to add? We've got just a few minutes here before we through with our okay. Joshua, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the topic here of this particular call was wildfire and drones, right? So, I think that unmanned systems have a part to play at every stage of land management, active wildfire fighting, and then reforestation. And I think that's really significant that, this is not a technology, unmanned systems, specifically, drones are going to revolutionize a lot of different industries. They already are revolutionizing certain industries. But because it's such a broadly applicable technology, we really have an opportunity to totally change the way we manage forests, the way we manage wildland through very carefully done prescribed fire at scale, at lower cost than it's done right now, at a higher degree of safety than it's done right now. A lot of helicopter pilots die flying these missions, and they're also quite expensive. By doing them with drones, it's going to be cheaper, safer, more broadly applicable. The government's already investing in it. I think they just passed a bill for an extra, $500 million a year in prescribed burns. So this is good. On the active fire side, providing more real-time data. This is kind of the stuff that Emberflash is working on, which is one of the things. I'm sure this is very broad, but better data, better unmanned resupply to the firefighters to make their jobs safer. Nighttime operations, things that aren't being done right now, can all be done using unmanned systems. And then on the reforestation side, the work that Drone Seed is doing. So I think these, drones are really going to revolutionize the entire forestry spectrum.
Excellent. Oh, it looks like Rodrigo's got something there.
Yeah, I'm just following up on this one. I believe that we are, I believe that we are at the very early stages of the technology to manage more than just wildfires, although that's of course the most urgent thing, to manage environmental challenges, right? And this is me talking. I believe that the time for mitigation in climate change is long gone, that for many reasons we failed as a species to intervene the way we had. So we have to get much more clever at intervening with technology. We need to change exponentially our capabilities to deal with the challenges like wildfires. And we have the technology, right? The big data revolution, drone technology, so we can regain some control, right? This includes prescribed burns, as just mentioned, right? We might be having to burn much more of California, for example, but we wanted to do it in our own terms, in ways that we know is good for the environment. That requires good data modeling. We need to be able to reforest, right? And this is where Cassie's technology comes into play and so relevant, right? These burn scars, every year that we don't intervene and fix them, it's a year that they can become more of a problem, right? So we really need to get, and fortunately, the technology we have today in the pipeline is orders of magnitude better than what we've been using the last 60 years to manage the problem. And that's the challenge, right? Good policy, good regulation, of course, specifically great entrepreneurship like the one we're seeing here is going to give us the tools we need. So we are not always at the receiving end of the problem. And that's why events like this one are so important. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those comments and insights. Rodrigo, Lee, Cassie, and Joshua, thank you very much for joining us. And folks, you can see in the chat people putting in their contact information, and we look forward to continuing on with the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Josh. Very inspiring. And thank you for setting up our next panel discussion too on education and workforce. So getting some insight into what some of these companies working actively on these issues are looking for. So yes, we're going to move on to the education and workforce panel to hear about some of the opportunities in our local institutions for drone education. I'll turn it over to Andrea Pesci.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, that was such a great discussion and a great intro into this next one, I think. I'm just really excited about this panel because I really feel that education and workforce are the foundation of successful economic development. And that's our ultimate goal here at DART, supporting the growth of the DART industries for the benefit of our community. You know, something that a lot of people don't know about me actually is that my technical background is in ecology, in particular marine ecology. I met my husband on a research expedition to Antarctica, but I'm obviously not doing anything like that now. But I like to think that it's not, you know, a giant leap to go from thinking about all the important interconnected parts that make for a healthy, resilient ecosystem to thinking and contributing to that with respect to our community and economic ecosystem. So I know the people on this panel are doing a heck of a lot of that kind of thinking about how to create a healthy, thriving regional community. And I know they also recognize the important contribution of drones, automation, and robotics technology in achieving that. So I'm going to ask each panelist to just take a couple of minutes to introduce themselves before we get to questions. But let me just briefly tell you who they are before we do that. Clint Cowden, Dean of Career Technical Education and Workforce Development at Hartnell College. Of course, Hartnell College, second to none in thinking about its community and community needs. Justin Cummings, Associate Director of the Citrus Initiative for Drone Education and Research at UC Santa Cruz. He is also the Santa Cruz City Council member, or a City Council member, and without a doubt thinking about our community in several dimensions. Larry Samuels, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and the Executive Director of the University Corporation of our CSUMB Monterey Bay. I know their strategic initiatives put the community at the forefront of their priorities. And Kate Roberts, President and CEO at Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. Need I say more? She's the mother of our Tri-County Economic Development Initiatives. So I just really want to thank all four of you for joining us today and just for everything you do for all of us. So why don't we try to go in that order for a little deeper intro, and then we'll get to questions. Clint, can you please start us off and tell us a little bit about your work? And when you're ready, you can go ahead and pass the baton to Justin.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for having me come. And based on the previous conversation, I'm definitely the dumbest person in the room. But I'm okay with that because I love being around really, really smart people that can really start to give us kind of that future of where we should be going. So just a little bit about my background and kind of how I got into a little bit of this technology. I got out of college at that time period when GPS guided tractors weren't really there, but they started to be around. And my first drone, we didn't call it drone. It was a remote control airplane that we had like a Pixar camera strapped on the bottom of it. And we were trying to take some imagery to determine how much we should irrigate. We move forward now in our time here at Hartnell College. And we're really, really focused right now on that robotics automation segment. And so One of the things that we've been looking and listening to our industry for a long period of time is how can we really keep up with this automation robotics scale up that's happening within our industry sectors. And I think the thing that makes maybe a community college different than the universities that we're going to hear from is a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is really involved with incumbent workers. And so as we get this automation, as we get these things, how do we really scale those skills for the people that are currently working in these sectors, right? I mean, we definitely don't want to be the next Detroit, right? And so one of the amazing things that we've been able to do is work with local employers. We've received, this past 3 months, we spent a little bit over $1.7 million on mechatronics equipment. And our mechatronics program, we're really looking at it maybe a little slightly different than some of the other schools around the United States when they look at mechatronics. But I think what really kind of aligns with this program is we're looking at mechatronics in the static environment in a processing plant, and how do we do these things, but also that dynamic environment. How are we looking at incorporating mechatronics in drones? And we're still at this stage where we're focused on terrestrial drones. How are we going to be doing these with mechanical weeding, those types of things? So we're really working on that spectrum. And for a lot of students that are going to be, quote unquote, the robot pilot, that mechanic, that person that's keeping things going. And then our other side of the house, our engineering and STEM side of the house, they're teaching all those really hardcore sciences so that our students can transfer on to these amazing universities, and then be those people that are designing and really doing that farther out. So I think that is my time, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to Justin.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. I put together a few slides. Let me see if I can bring it up. All right. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Justin Cummings, and I'm going to speak a little bit about my background and also a little bit about the Citrus Initiative for Drone Education and Research, which was recently launched here at UC Santa Cruz. So a little bit about my background. I'm originally from Chicago, and I have a BS in biology and a BA in Spanish from Eastern Illinois University. And I have a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from UC Santa Cruz. My work has largely focused on forest restoration and climate change monitoring. Most recently, I helped create the Dorsey Conservation Scholars Program at UCSC, which focuses on increasing diversity and environmental conservation. My background in drones actually goes back to just last year in March, when I started working with Dr. Becca Fenwick as a drone pilot and environmental sensor technician for the UC Natural Reserve System's California Heartbeat Initiative. And more recently, I have become the co-founder and will serve as the associate director of the Citrus Initiative for Drone Education and Research, which we launched at the beginning of this month. In addition to my professional work in science, I also serve on the Santa Cruz City Council. As Andrea mentioned, I was mayor of Santa Cruz in 2020, and currently I'm a candidate for the 3rd District Supervisor seat for Santa Cruz County. So the Citrus Initiative for Drone Education and Research is comprised of 5 people. Michael Matkin, who is the Assistant Campus Director for Citrus and is also a co-founder of CIDR. Professor JJ Garcia Luna Aceves, who is Faculty Director for Citrus and also CIDR. Eric Guerrieri, who is Administrative Assistant for Citrus and CIDR. Dr. Becca Fenwick, who is the Director and co-founder of CIDR, and myself as the Associate Director of CIDR. So the mission of our group is that we are hoping to bring together diverse students, researchers, and industry partners from a variety of different sectors to really help fuel research and innovation around drones and develop a diverse drone workforce. UCSC has been growing its leadership role with drones statewide, building on regional partnerships both within academia and industry. And our program will be the first, or I should say is, the first ever UC drone academic training program that will help prepare our diverse students for success in drone and automation fields. And so there's 5 pillars of the program. one of which is to support students from underrepresented groups. There's a large amount of data that highlights that people of color are underrepresented in STEM fields. And one of the things that we hope to do is, as a Hispanic serving institution, really tap into those students and those people from groups that have been largely underrepresented in STEM and help prepare them for, good paying careers in the drone field. We also are going to work on securing commercial contracts that will not only help us fund the program, but will also provide opportunities for students to get hands-on experience flying drones for real-world application. We are looking forward to working with industry and collaborating with industry partners to learn about their needs and also use that information to help us create educational curriculums to prepare students for going into drone industry jobs. We're going to be providing research support for faculty and students on campus. After conducting a survey, one of the things that we realized was that while many faculty would like to use drones in their work, there's barriers around purchasing drones for the cost, and then learning how to use drones and processing that data. And so our group will work with faculty and grad students. For those faculty who have 107 licenses but need access to drones, we'll be able to loan those drones out. But for people who may not know how to fly drones or process data, we'll also offer those services as well. And ultimately, we really want to help create curriculum for students that they can take so that they can take classes and learn how to not only process data, but also fly drones, get their 107 license, and really start kind of focusing on that application of drones, along with drone development in terms of engineering. And so I'll stop there, and I'm not sure who I'm supposed to pass this on to next, but I think—
How about Larry?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Andrea. Larry Samuels, VP Strategic Initiatives at CSUMB. Was not always in the academic sphere. I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley in the early stages of the industry. So I was general manager of Atari US, then VP of Strategic Initiatives worldwide for Atari, including education. Did a number of gigs, Creative Labs, was CEO of communities.com, and then around the turn of the millennium, I decided that I had done enough in the private sector and I wanted to take some of the management skills and strategic skills that I had acquired over the course of my career and move them to the public space. And I chose higher education, which was probably, I don't know, it was a very interesting choice because I had dropped out of high school. So I went from being a CEO of a relatively high flying Silicon Valley company to being a freshman at Cabrillo College. Made it through there, transferred to Berkeley, got my master's and PhD from Stanford. The focus of my research at Stanford was public higher ed systems in the state of California, how to make them more effective and more functional in terms of outputting students in a more efficient way and educating students more effectively. My work at CSUMB kind of came out of actually the organization that Kate heads, MBEP. I did a series of white papers and in the process met the president of CSUMB, who looked at an ex-CEO from the Valley and a possessor of a PhD from Stanford in higher ed, and decided that would be a great blend to bring to the university. And I've lived in this region with one small exception since 1977. I was a student at DLI as a kid and have literally lived in either Monterey County or Santa Cruz County for most of the last 40 years. And so I love the region and I'm very passionate about it. And I think this is a very interesting geographical microcosm for higher education in the state of California. You've got an elite federal research institution, postgraduate institution. You've got a world-class public research institution, R1 is what we call them in the nomenclature of higher ed. You have a burgeoning comprehensive university, much more of a focus on applied research in the space in CSU. And you have 4 very good community colleges, all of which offer associate's degrees in engineering. So, looking at this space and trying to decide how are you going to most effectively create economic development in a region that heretofore has really had a bifurcated, and particularly in Monterey County, a bifurcated wage scale of high-end and low-end workers, and a singular dependency on 2 primary areas of economic development, being tourism and agriculture. The coming out of Silicon Valley, having an understanding of the phenomenon of Route 128 and the Boston corridor and the Research Triangle in North Carolina, education, that's the answer. You build a really strong cooperative educational structure that creates the workforce and the knowledge and the research necessary to kick off an industry. There's some very, there's some great technology coming out of Naval Postgraduate School. Super excited about what's being promised by Citrus, and very aware of what's coming out of Hartnell, MPC, Cabrillo, Gavilan. There's some real components to success here. I mean, that was the reason that we conceived at CSUMB of the engineering school, because we see the shortage of skilled workers in this area, and you have to grow your own. I mean, obviously, anyone who lives in this region has seen the kind of influx of migration of skilled workers from the valley that is starting to change somewhat the face here. But we've got a real challenge here to meet and I think the previous panel was alluding to that, to meet the labor demands and the skilled workforce demands that this industry and this engineering space requires, and the cross-disciplinary skills inherent to it. So we're here for that. We're really excited, glad to be part of this panel. I think that you see with one of our regional community colleges, UCSC and CSUMB, you see the cross spectrum of and the kind of cooperation that's going to be necessary to really mount and meet this challenge. Kate.
Thanks, Larry. Great intro to what MBEP does. We're, I feel like a little fish out of water here with all these fabulous educators here on the panel with me. But I run an organization that is a regional nonprofit that really looks to how we can create more synergies and get out of our silos to work in a cross-sector fashion to solve the problems that we're facing here in our region. So MBEP is, and I'm asked Haley on my team, Haley Mears, who runs our workforce development initiative, to help me populate some links in the chat as I kind of give a quick overview. But MBEP is we've been around about 6 years, and we have a broad focus. We focus on housing. We talked about a little bit of those that were able to attend the tour yesterday at Joby and see you all in 3D, which was fabulous. It's a huge need for us here in the region, and a huge hindrance and an obstacle for hiring folks and getting people in the workforce pipeline if they can't get in a house that suits their financial needs. We also do a lot of work in broadband, which, as we're even seeing on this panel, can be challenging if we don't have a strong broadband connection. So a lot of work to go there. We do some work in climate change, and really, again, thinking about how we can bring the sectors together to understand how businesses can use that as a competitive advantage, and how we can work together to solve that huge problem that we all face. And then, of course, we do a lot of work in workforce development, which is kind of the gist of this discussion today. So I just wanted to say that we really look at that intersection of educators and employers and how we can bring folks together to bridge that and sometimes do a little translation. So Haley had put in the chat earlier our Monterey Bay Interns portal, which we brought forth about 5 years ago with our partners. And that's a big part of our Monterey Bay Career Connect tool, which is a free resource for employers, for people that are looking for jobs, for students, to get the resources that they need around finances, around career options, around all sorts of things. So there's a ton of tools there that I wanted to make you all aware of, whether you're looking for a job or whether you're hiring. And in the convening vein, we also bring together folks twice a year around our large conferences. And we have one coming up a week from tomorrow, which is our State of the Region event. So I wanted to make you all aware of that. And we're really super excited, thanks to Larry, to have JoBen Bevert be our keynote speaker. So those of you that were excited to hear yesterday from Bonnie about all the really exciting things happening at Joby, and to even go on the tour, those of us that were able to go on the tour, you heard about the needs that they have about hiring, and the great opportunity that presents for us here in the region. So pretty excited to hear about JoBen and what he's going to share with us next Friday. In addition, I just wanted to put a quick plug in for the California Economic Summit. This is something you all may not be aware of, being more focused in the drone area, but it's a really important link to our economic success here in the region, is thinking about how the work that we're doing here plugs into that effort. So I'm actually co-chair of that event, which happens every year and rotates around the state. And for the first time, that's coming to Monterey. And that will be November 9th and 10th. And the day prior, we're having some really exciting tours, including a tour of Joby, which you can optionally opt into when you register for that event. So I would really encourage you to think about either virtually joining that event, which there's an option, or physically coming to Monterey to partake in the work groups. There's going to be amazing working sessions. The governor's going to be there giving a keynote, as is Leon Panetta and our own Congressman Jimmy Panetta. There's going to be really also very interesting panel of CEOs that are going to speak about being the economic engine of our economy. So I just want to put a plug in for that too. But I think just there's so much, just being part of this symposium these last couple of days, hearing things like, you know, from day one, moving at the speed of China. I mean, that applies not only in the regulatory environment that that panel was focused on, but here in the workforce. How do we think big and move quickly to get people the skills that they need in order to fill the opportunities that are ahead of us? I just think there's so much excitement that Joby brings to it that we heard about yesterday too. So, and the forest management careers that the previous panel talked about, and was met, as we mentioned, we helped put that video together, helped get the funding for that through the Morgan Family Foundation, which is a great supporter of the California Stewardship Network, of which MBEP is part of. So there's a lot of opportunity there. We're also really focused on equity. You know, we're a triple bottom line organization, so economy is definitely in our name, but we also think about environment and equity, and how can we, as Justin was talking about, bring these burgeoning opportunities to be more populated with people of color. We have such a wealth of talent here, of local students that would be super awesome in these jobs. Let's figure out a way to connect, that's my timer, to connect all those kids into these fantastic jobs that are happening, and using that equity lens. I did want to just briefly mention something that was shown yesterday, so I won't bother with showing some slides, but the hot off the press, just this Monday, actually, we submitted a huge EDA grant called Build Back Better. MBEP was one of the conveners to work with our colleagues in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo County. Andrea was a huge part of that heavy lift. But my point is that that whole potentially $80 million of monies that could potentially come into our region if we're successful in gaining that grant, it's all centered on aerospace and on this possibility of where these jobs and this economic driver is headed with drones, with Joby, with all sorts of aviation possibilities. So fingers crossed, if you guys know anybody at the EDA, put in a good word. And we're really excited to see where that work might take us, even if we don't get the grant. I think it's all about embarking on this collaboration together with the 6 counties, and super excited to see where that takes us. Thanks, Andrea. Back to you.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you, Kate, for all that great information. And I've got to say too, and just echo your promotion of the 2 events. you know, the MBEP State of the Region is like the highlight of my fall. Usually I love that event, and I think everyone sign up, go to it. And then, you know, the California State Economic Summit is in Monterey this year. So they're recognizing what we all are, I think. So let's get to some questions. I have a good one here to start us off with, probably our educational folks. How effective would you say is our current educational infrastructure in providing training for the application and innovation of new technologies like drones and robotics? Maybe Larry, you sort of took a high level approach a little bit in your intro and introducing that concept. If you want to maybe kick off some insight into that question. Oh, you're muted, Larry. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you. A fascinating and unpacking kind of solution issue. If you look at the Valley and you look at in Silicon Valley and you look at the way that things evolved there, there was this intersection of skills and knowledge that kind of organically grew. You had people in the early stages. It didn't matter what school you went to. It didn't matter if you went to school. I dropped out of high school, but I kind of had pretty senior positions at large companies. It matters now. Things have changed. There's much more formality. And when you're looking at, and there are reasons for that, largely because most of the early stuff was programming and nothing but programming. And if you were good, you were good. And if you could sell, you could sell. In this space, the kind of skills that are necessary require a strata of different educational typologies. So you've got research institutions such as UCSC or the Naval Postgraduate School. You've got more applied research entities like CSUMB, and you've got skills, high level, because this stuff is not, simplistic, and it's high level skills acquisition and implementation at community colleges and at CSUMB, and at some level also at UCSC. So this stack of educational infrastructures has to work together in order to really create a heterogeneous educational environment. And that means that and Admiral Rondeau at Naval Postgraduate School has been a big proponent of kind of stepping out of the silo of federal government research and trying to work with regional educational entities. As Andrea knows, CSUMB and UCSC are actively in conversations around trying to partner to create some very unique educational initiatives, likely headquartered at MBEST in Monterey County. And the work that the Monterey Bay College Pathways Partnership is doing to create completely articulated 4-year pathways to degree is those would be the 4 community colleges and CSUMB as partners right now. Those are the kind of cooperative networks that are necessary to make this go. There is an organic nature to this, but it can be created. And the foundational building blocks for this are education, skills development, basic business components are a big part of this too, right? You have to understand what an end product is. And then creating a dialogue. I mean, anybody in Silicon Valley in the early days would talk about network. The whole notion of networking, people would go out after work. There was no internet. You would go after work and then just talk. And then you'd have ideas popping from one company to another. And that kind of dialogue and a focus on fundamental skill development, but also cutting edge research in this space. It's a unique opportunity because it's a nascent domain, and you've got an industry leader like Joby that obviously needs workforce, but also is going to be part and parcel of creating the skills development and the research initiatives that are going to be needed to get us there. So I would say, if you look at robotics in the Valley, strong, also in Cambridge and in Boston, aeronautics, strong in Southern California. If you're going to say where the strength is in VTOL, aircraft, and robotics, or the blend thereof, there really isn't one place that that's true. It's a nice time to be out of a primary air corridor in an area that has a lot of geographical open space to be able to test and work in this domain, and has a very nice little semi-closed network of educational institutions in a specific geographical domain that are starting to talk in ways that they have never talked in my experience in my lifetime here in the Monterey Bay area. So.
Yeah, you're right, Larry. I'm glad that you ended on that point, because that's what I feel too, is that there's more will now for cooperation and collaboration. And I haven't been in this area as long as you have, but it's just like everybody's really working together for the good of everyone, not for for its own. And I don't know, I really loved all the points you made, and it almost would just set up for maybe Justin to talk about a little bit more of some things that are materializing in now. Justin, would you like to add some more on
Sure.
this question?
Yeah. So, I think to add to this, when it comes to kind of the innovation and how we're set up to, provide education along the innovation perspective, I think that we're there. I think that, for example, at Ucsc, they've had a robotics program going on for a really long time now. We also have the cyber physical systems group that's there, that's really looking at UAVs, automation, and we see that in a number of different sectors, whether it's self-driving cars or drones. We're seeing that technology is there, and I think that one of the things that we've been experiencing is really trying to now take that technology and really make the applications known to faculty and students. A couple years ago, this notion of using drones and these questions around using drones for ecology had come up in some circles, and for some professors it's like, well, what would I use drones for, right? But we do know that remote sensing is something that's been used for a really long time, and so drawing those connections between old technologies that we've used to help us answer ecological questions, and then being able to highlight how now we can use drones because of advancements in the sensor technology, the reduction in price, longer flight times. These are some of the things that are now allowing, for the purposes of ecology and forest management and resource management, it's really now becoming this field where we can utilize these tools to help us answer ecological questions. And then from there, now we need to start educating students on, the different applications so that they can, when they graduate from college, they'll have the skills that they need in order to go into these workforces that are, likely going to have high demand for these kinds of skills. And just to kind of highlight, where things are at, the FAA has a collegiate training initiative that was launched in 2018 and went live last year. And of the 600 plus 4-year, 2-year, and trade schools in the state of California, there's only 10 FAA recognized drone programs in the entire state. And so I think that is a really good metric to use for understanding like where we're at in terms of these kinds of programs and just the need to develop more of these programs throughout the state. I will say that, there are classes that are offered at different universities. UCSC has been, or I should say the UC has been partnering with CSUs to offer drone camp. And we offered our 6th one this summer, which is a week-long workshop on kind the application, use, and development of drones. But obviously with the previous panel where we saw numerous companies that are emerging that need these skills to drive this workforce, there is a demand, and we're in a position where I think right now, if we can start getting certain programs off the ground like CITER and other educational programs, we'll really be able to provide the training needed to meet the workforce demands of the present and the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Clint, would you like to make any other comments on this question?
Just going to touch a little bit on some of the really cool thing that this region, and getting back to the concept of regionalism that is really cool here, is spotlighting the types of partnerships that have been happening. So the at Hartnell and CSUMB, that computer science degree in 3 years, students being able to come in and talk about looking at equity and looking at programs that have really moved the needle. And then looking back that further step and looking at Coder Dojo and the amount of computer science that is offered to our region. I think a lot of times we look at our region with a deficit mindset of like, but wait, there's this amazing force of students that have been now for the last 10, 12 years working in these types of things. And they're craving more and more. They're craving these universities. They're craving these things, but they're also craving staying home. And I think that to me is where we've got it. It's awesome. And they want to be here. We want to be here. And so, we don't need to send our students out to these far-flung locations around the world. We can keep them right here. And with great employers, we can keep here. So that's the part that I was going to touch on.
Yeah, that's great, Clint. You're right. Okay, so why don't we move on to another question, and maybe I'll direct this one to Kate. Kate, like what approaches and tools would you say are most valuable in preparing students to use new technology to have an impact in their careers and more broadly in industry? Based on your experience.
Great, thanks, Andrea. And I have to apologize. We're having a little work done. So if you hear hammering in the background, it's that's what that is. Anyway, yeah, I think that the most important thing is really work-based learning, right? Making that connection with students getting actually on-the-job training, whether it be an internship, whether it be a apprenticeship, whatever that form takes. It could just be even a job shadow, just exposing kids to what really a job in their particular area of interest looks like, and what is that day-to-day activity like. So as I mentioned earlier, and I think Haley's put in the chat, we have some great tools, our Monterey Bay Career Connect. And one particular tool within that site is called Career Coach. And this is something that, even if you're, going down a level from the current panelists here, going down into high school or even middle school, let's say you love biology and you're, in 6th grade and you really want to know what jobs might be available in that area. And so as a young girl, you could go in there and see that you could be a seed technician or some other really cool thing that leverages your interest in biology and could really become a career. So you can see, what that job is, how much does it pay, what's its growth potential, what are some local curricula offerings that I could take in order to achieve that career. So it's this wonderful free resource that you can go in and really understand whether you're a returning vet and you want to put in your job code that you had as a military person, and it would spit out a bunch of jobs that are relevant and are the people that are hiring here in our region. As I said, whether you're a student or whether you're somebody that's just emerging into the job field and want to see where there might be opportunities for you to apply your skills. So, helping all those audiences get the work experience they need. We really encourage the employers that we work with, and we have almost 90 members of MBEP. We are a member-supported organization that has the largest employers in the region as members. And we really encourage them when they do offer any type of internship to offer a paid internship, because so many kids, especially from our local Hispanic youth whose families struggle to, work in agriculture, work in tourism, which are, obviously traditionally very low paying jobs. They don't have the opportunity to just take a summer job and not contribute to their family's income. They have to work. So and they have to get paid for that work. So whether they're going to go work in the fields that summer and pick strawberries, or whether they're going to go and intern at a drone organization to follow their passion about science and STEM that they've really gotten a lot out of in school, that's the kind of decisions they're making. So that we really want our members to offer paid internships. So that's super important. And, again, with the equity lens, making sure that specific communities are not left behind. As I mentioned, veterans, at-risk youth, we do a lot to do outreach there. A lot of those audiences can easily be overlooked and forgotten. And MBEP always really tries to strive to make sure that we're thinking about what those needs are and how we can provide tools and resources to help them get a leg up and to gain access to these jobs and these work-based learning opportunities.
Awesome, Kate. Yeah, these are such valuable resources and really important priorities that MBEP prioritizes. Excuse me. You used a term, work-based learning, and I think really students, especially post-pandemic, really they're not willing to just sit in a lecture hall and listen to what they might do in the future now. I mean, it's really another term that we use for work-based learning is experiential learning in higher ed. And that I think is really where education is heading, or at least in some substantial way that it wasn't before. Justin, would you be interested in talking a little bit about your experience in that kind of experiential learning framework with respect to approaches and tools that are valuable in preparing our students for this dark sort of workforce?
Yeah. So as the director and one of the co-founders of the Doors to Conservation Scholars Program, one of the things that we really highlighted with that program was, getting students out into the field and actually, giving them the skills so that they could observe patterns in nature, come up with questions, design their experiments, analyze their data, and present their work. And, I feel like one of the benefits of these kinds of approaches is that students actually get those, real world experiences where they get to take what they learn and apply it to real questions. And as we're kind of moving forward with the development of the CIDR program, that one of the things we really want to emphasize and try to do is work with industry so that we can understand, what are the needs of industry moving forward? What are some of the questions that you all have, and how can we create educational programs and also, capstone projects and other types of opportunities so that students are actually taking what they're learning, applying it to real world questions, and understanding, what that workforce is going to look like and what their jobs are going to look like when they get out of school. And I think that's very different from, the traditional models of, as you were mentioning, go to class, sit in lecture, take a test, get a grade, graduate, right? It's really trying to emphasize, we're going to teach you what you need to know, and then you're going to actually go and apply it. And I think that many students are finding this to be much more beneficial and a much more productive way of learning. And I'm hoping we can, really strengthen UCSC's position in these types of fields as they're emerging, so that we can be a leading producer of a strong workforce moving forward.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you. Yeah. Clint or Larry, feel free to add anything you may like. We have some other questions too, if you feel.
I actually have something in this that I think is salient. If you look historically at higher education, you look at even MBA programs. In the early days of the Valley, we didn't want to hire anybody with an MBA because they thought they knew everything, even though they'd never done anything. And it was maddening, they'd come in and say, well, I've got my MBA from Stanford, so this is how it should be done. But, the dynamics of the Valley were that the winds would change from one day to the next. Microsoft would announce something, and it meant you had to rev your entire product strategy from soup to nuts. The skills development that you get from project-based learning has really transformed business education. I mean, you look at MIT, Harvard, Stanford. What they do now is they put their students through intensive amounts of project-based learning. That same kind of approach is actually now taken hold completely through engineering schools. So yeah, you get the basic skills. You know how to use Ruby, you know how to use Python. But do you really know how to build something using those technologies? So taking a project, starting from the conceptualization of the idea, building a roadmap, trying it, failing, iterating, failing, iterating, succeeding, learning collaborative. I mean, a lot of this now is all team-based work. You have to learn to, you can learn in a classroom as a single individual, but you have to learn how to do project-based and collaborative teamwork, because that's everything. This is classic example. The state just, surprisingly, we didn't expect it, budgeted $10 million to the Computing Talent Initiative at CSUMB. The Computing Talent Initiative is essentially a combination of, I want to say, finishing school, kind of learning how to get through the Google interview process. It's the classic dress for success or polishing, but also a heavy amount of intern-based focus and collaborative project-based work. That's where we're going in the future. And yeah, there will be machine learning and outside and AI components that are part of that process, but working with other human beings to conceptualize the way to solve problems and learning how to be able to go through that process is critical, and it's an essential change that's manifested in higher education in the last 20 to 30 years. And at this point, it is the way to go to market to build those kind of skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Larry. That was so well said. Clint, I want to give you the chance to talk about this too. We're running low on time, but please feel free to comment, and then I'll direct my next question to you first.
No, and I'll just be really quick, but going on what Larry had to say, I was in a group 2 days ago when we were talking about the difference between college and high school is like American football and soccer. And then the person said, but my first 4 years after I got my bachelor's degree was like rugby. I mean, they're kind of the same, but they're not, right? And so I think a lot of us are really looking at this and saying, how can we get our students into the industry faster? How can they understand that? And then that other segment for me as a community college, I'll never keep up with technology as fast as you guys are moving in the industry. So if I can teach them those good quality foundations, those good quality basics, and if they're out there learning with you on that cutting edge, that relationship is how we're going to produce those really, really high quality students that industry is always asking for.
And I'm going to stick in one quick thing, and it starts in K-12.
Yeah.
So K-12 educators, parents, this is not something that higher ed can pick you up and jam you into the world with. You need a foundation, and that starts in our educational system. And I guess really pre-K to 12. So.
Fantastic. Actually, Clint and Larry, I think that is an excellent note to end on, as we've just run out of time. And it actually leads nicely into our innovation and entrepreneurship panel. I think, again, education being the foundation of, successful growth of our community ecosystem, our economic development, and innovation being a piece of that too, and in several ways, education and more. And I just want to thank you all again for your time today, this morning. We're so grateful for your insight, and just can't thank you enough for your support. So I'm going to turn it back over to Michael, and we're going to head to the next panel. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrea. And thanks everyone on that really illuminating panel. I think it's clear for everyone in industry there are certainly opportunities for you to have input in this process too, the things you're looking for, the skill sets, and actual warm bodies. It's an open door and an open conversation. So we're going to move on to our next panel on innovation and entrepreneurship, looking at some of the ways new developments can be supported and are supported. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris Bly.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris Bly here, and I'm honored to be moderating this panel on innovation and entrepreneurship. It's something that I feel very strongly about because I've been involved in it, and excited to be hosting this excellent panel. David with Island Conservation, Manel at UC Santa Cruz, Pauline with FarmWise, and Russell at Exactly. So for those of you that don't know me, I have a little background in the region. I went to UC Santa Cruz back in the early 80s and studied biology there. And before I even knew this experiential learning terminology, I was always one sitting in the classroom staring out the window, thinking that there was a lot going on out there and I wanted to get out there and experience it. But as education goes, I was kind of stuck in my seat. But once I was able to get out, I was able to work for an entrepreneurial company based here in Santa Cruz. And then after that, I got really involved with wind energy, initially rappelling down wind turbines for inspection, maintenance, and repair. And then that led into using drones to do a lot of that work. So that was an interesting evolution from which I learned, and there was a better way to do it. And so, that intersection between kind of the idea and then implementing it is really interesting to me. And I kind of want to touch on that with our panel in the next hour or a little less than that. But yeah, let's kick off with each one of our panel members giving a little overview. So let's start off with David and hear about what you're up to at Island Conservation.
Thanks, Chris. I'm David Will with Island Conservation, our head of innovation. Island Conservation is a global nonprofit with our headquarters based in Santa Cruz. We were started by two professors at UC Santa Cruz at the Conservation Action Lab 25 years ago, and we've restored 64 islands since they initially founded us in 25 years ago. Personally, I did my undergraduate in bioinformatics at UC Santa Cruz, and was lucky enough to be able to get an internship my last year with Island Conservation, and that turned into a full-time job, and I've been there for more than 10 years now, working with Island Conservation and doing the work there. I have some slides to share. Is that easier for me to share, Chris? Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Share that screen. So Island Conservation, like I said, we prevent the extinction of species by removing invasive species from islands. We work on islands because they make up a small percentage of the world's landmass, but host a really disproportionate number of the world's most threatened species, with more than 40% of the world's most threatened species occurring on islands. And one of the leading causes of extinctions on islands is the introduction of damaging non-native invasive species such as rats, cats, goats, and pigs. And more than 86% of extinctions have been linked to the presence and the damage from invasive species. So if we want to have one of the most disproportionate impacts on biodiversity conservation, removing invasive species from islands is one of the ways that we can do that. And to really hammer that point home, we did some research that showed that if we removed invasive species from just 169 islands, we could protect 10% of the world's most threatened biodiversity. And eradications is a global tool. There's been more than 1,000 successful eradication attempts done to date, and they have really binary outcomes. Either the invasive species have been removed or they haven't been removed. And we see a really remarkable result from removing invasive species. Pictured here are a couple of those examples of species that were previously considered extinct being discovered after the removal of invasive species, species being downlisted with populations recovering back to pre-introduction levels. But we're also seeing benefits to terrestrial ecosystems with 5,000% forest cover increase on an island in the tropics, but also ridge to reef benefits that we know that benefits to terrestrial environments also goes into marine environments with increased fish biomass on invasive free islands compared to invaded islands. And those clearly have benefits to people in the island communities that live and work around those islands. Kind of getting towards the innovation space, we did a horizon scanning exercise in 2015 that looked at how can we scale this tool? How can we increase the scale, scope, and pace? And we identified that only 15% of islands where we wanted to remove invasive species from were feasible with our current toolbox. So we really needed to diversify that toolbox and reduce the cost, improve the safety, and improve the feasibility of this kind of conservation intervention. And so our innovation program has kind of 3 different buckets focused on how we can increase those tools. One of those is using drone technologies for drones and for our work. Applying a conservation bait is one of the most impactful, one of the most common tools to remove invasive rodents from islands. And it usually requires applying it with helicopters, which can be cost prohibitive in remote locations. And so using heavy lift drone technologies to apply conservation bait. And we did the first drone-based eradication in the Galapagos in 2018, applying 1,500 kilograms of product over 20 hours of flight time. And we're looking to scale that program and scale those technologies. And we recently were successful in fundraising for a $1.5 million drone program to scale those technologies in heavy lift, animal tracking, and surveillance and detection over the next couple of years. But not just on technology development, but also talking about what the workforce group was talking about. We're working in partnership with island communities, and how can we empower island communities to be using these technologies themselves? So not just technology development, but also that workforce development. The other bucket that we're really working in is automated field work and decision making. You can imagine that confirming the absence of the species is really challenging on these large islands. And a third of all of our project activity is spent searching for and identifying that we've actually successfully completed the project. And so looking at IoT technologies and quantitative decision tools to be able to declare success sooner and confirm absence sooner. We were recently joined an international partnership based out of New Zealand that is a $1 million over 3-year project to look at environmental DNA sampling to be able to use environmental DNA to detect the presence of invasive species on islands. And really the third bucket is a recognition that a lot of the tools that we're currently using are limited, have other impacts to native species, to the environment that require mitigation and limit the ability to use those tools. So looking at how can we create more specific removal methods on islands. And we're one of the facilitating and founding members of the Genetic Biocontrol for Invasive Rodents program, which is 7 different agencies, multi-million-dollar 5-year program that is exploring how we could use gene drive technologies to remove invasive rodents from islands, with the idea of using a gene drive to drive a population to either entirely male or entirely female, and that it would eventually reproduce itself out of existence. That's kind of our moonshot technology, that there's a lot of questions about how we could actually get all of that done in a safe and ethical manner. So that's kind of a broad spectrum of the innovation program that we're doing at Island Conservation, and look forward to contributing more to this panel.
Yeah, great, David. That was fantastic and amazing work that you're all doing at Island Conservation, and a company that came right out and started out of Santa Cruz with roots at UC Santa Cruz. And also I know David worked really closely with the Center for Integrated Research, which is a GIS group, Geographic Information Systems, up at UC Santa Cruz. And so just amazing things that you guys are doing, and which is a great lead in to Manel. And love to hear more about what you're up to. No. And you're on mute, Manel.
Sorry. Okay, so hi, my name is Manel Camps. I serve as director for the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurial Development. My background is actually in the biological sciences, but the different side of the biological sciences. I'm a veterinarian and a genetic microbiologist. My relationship to entrepreneurship started when I started working at Crown College, because the colleges are very interesting organizations inside UCSC. Essentially, they're pedagogical laboratories. So places where you can experiment programs, educational programs. We're also underfunded, which means that you have to be very creative about launching these programs off, which was another way in which I started getting interested in entrepreneurship as providing solutions to problems. Right? Also, it goes back to my personal experience growing up in Spain in the 70s. So the country had just ended a 40-year period of dictatorship where schools were really used for ideological purposes, and students were expected. So the education that we were receiving was really to be a salaried person. You did not receive the education that you need to be innovative, creative, set up your company. And to me, that really brought home the message that education can really perpetuate inequalities, right? If you teach students to get just a salary job, these students will have a hard time setting up their own companies and becoming independent or managing wealth. So effectively, you're leaving that to the upper middle and upper class. So for me, this was very personal. I really wanted to empower students to be able to do these other kinds of things. So when I became provost of Crown, I recruited a very talented lecturer who set up a project-based program for entrepreneurship. And this program has two parts. One part is how to design a business plan. And the second part is how to use this knowledge to help local businesses overcome the challenges of the pandemic. And that's Get Virtual. This lecturer is Nada Milkovic, and she co-founded Get Virtual with Toby Corey. And Crown partnered with Get Virtual to give our students academic credit for this. So that was quite an eye-opener for me. It also told me that you don't need to have a specific major in business or training in business to get involved with entrepreneurship. And as director for SEED, I really want to translate these lessons that we learned at Crown to the entire campus and engage other players on campus that are already involved in entrepreneurship. And our initial project to get to that point is to design a certificate where Crown provides the types of trainings that are not currently provided by other players at UCSC, but also gives credit for students who are already participating in these other programs at UCSC, so that we can have these, they can get this credit. We're also working to expand these experiential learning programs. And I very much look forward to participating in this panel.
Great, Manella. It's excellent background and of your history. And yeah, we'll move over to Pauline. And originally where you came from in Spain, Pauline to the northeast, she's originally from France. And so I'll pass the baton to you, Pauline.
Hi, everyone. I also have some slides, so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with you.
We'll get you that, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I'm Pauline. I'm indeed originally from France. I grew up on a ranch, and my family has been growing field crops forever, and we're also raising charolais. If you don't know this breed, it's an amazing. If you're a meat lover, it's an amazing breed. I joined FarmWise 4 years ago, and I'm in charge of business development there. So essentially corporate, and I would say also like external biz dev. So really trying to look at new opportunities for the business and where do we grow, how do we grow, what do we do after what we're doing now. So FarmWise is a we're 4-year-old company, farm robotics company based out of Salinas, California. We do have an engineering office in San Francisco. And we're massively expanding out of Salinas, which is where most of the, as you know, vegetable production in the United States is concentrated out of. We are leveraging 2 types of technological field to do what we do every day. So we leverage AI and computer vision on the one hand and robotics on the other end to essentially remove weeds out of vegetable fields. And that's our very, very first product. We are in business to help farmers deal with labor shortages and new regulatory environment that's being kind of implemented for them, whether it's increasing minimum wage, regulation around overtime, but also around chemical use. So we really want to be bridging the gap between an era of abundance of resources, and whether it's human resources on the labor side or chemical on the other end, towards an era where essentially those resources are not disappearing, but being very restrained. So our first product is, and this is the 3rd generation of our machine. We've built several models before that, and this is the current fleet that, if you're driving down the 101 and then going across Salinas, you may see those big orange machines here and there. So we have a fleet of 12 of these today working on different types of crops. And so we're leveraging machine learning to detect crops from weeds, and then we use robotics planning and eventually some custom hardware to remove weeds, sweep the fields essentially. So we provide an intra-row cultivation and inter-row cultivation. So we clean in between the rows of crops and then in between the crops themselves, something that's usually done by hand crews, people with a hoe that will walk around the field and weed. Some folks are using herbicides. The reality is today on most of the vegetables that you buy at the supermarket, there are very few herbicides registered to be used during the growing season. So once the crop has emerged out of the ground, so growers will apply pre-emergence herbicide. But the reality is essentially growers are out of chemical option most of the time, or chemical options are never offering 100% efficiency on weed control. And on the other end of the spectrum, their crews are getting smaller and smaller. So they are already, I would say, we work with some of the largest vegetable companies in the United States and probably in the world at this point. These folks are really, investing and putting dollars into these kind of forefront new technologies emerging, just to be able to be ready for a day when there is no one, or there is just 1 people instead of 25 ready to hoe the entire field. And so these machines are teleoperated. They are operated by a human who has a tablet and has the capacity to stop, brake, accelerate the machine, and then this person can also tweak a lot of little parameters so that we can adjust kind of the refinement of the weeding quality. This is for our own, I would say, quality supervision purposes, but it's also California regulation as of today. Moving forward, obviously, we're very interested in having several machines being operated by 1 person, and so on. And we also have an entire teleoperation system, essentially a group of remote people who are the interface between what's happening in the field and then our engineering team. So today we operate those machines as a service with 15 different farms, from the Salinas Valley down to kind of Santa Barbara area, Ventura County and Oxnard Plains, lots of salary down there. And then we're now also transitioning to Yuma and have acres there on the same types of crops. So really our portfolio is around your lettuce, all varieties of lettuce, cauliflower, broccoli, celery, cabbage, artichokes, radicchio, kale. And then we're planning to enter crops like processing tomatoes and melons, peppers. So we have 2 service centers where most of our folks are located out of, to all our operation people who service the machine, who transport the machine and operate them. We also have kind of divided our engineering team between people who are working, fully remotely post-COVID, and people who are, more hands-on and need to be in Salinas or Yuma. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be here and tell you more about what we do and sharing our perspective.
Thank you, Pauline. And I've actually had a chance to experience this machine and also see the problem too with, one day there'd be 100 people out with hose hoeing. And then one day I was driving down and I saw one of your machines. I was able to pull over and chat with the operator and walk down the rows with him. So it was really super valuable information and incredible technology that you've developed. So now we'll move over to Russell, and he's up in Canada, but is making a big commitment to be down here in the region with what he's doing. So take it away, Russell.
Thank you for having me, Chris, and to the fellow presenters. David, it's so exciting to see what you're doing. I am going to chat with you after. Instead of texting on the chat, I'll just talk to you soon. So what is Ucsc? I'm the founder and CEO of Ucsc. I've been working with Chris in a variety of ways just to learn more about the industry of the crops that Pauline just mentioned predominantly. So that was a great introduction, Pauline. Cauliflower, broccoli, lettuce, as you can see here in the bowl. These are the crops that we focus on, and we're a company that is essentially leveraging informatics, data analytics to help farmers understand exactly what's happening in their fields at any given time, with a predominant focus on the actual volume of product they're producing. So the counts, the number of harvesting members they'll need to harvest their crops, the number of boxes they'll need, the amount of storage they'll need. And it all leads to one very important part of a farming organization's mandate, which is to serve their client. And those clients in retail, for example, they expect certain volumes of crops and production to flow through the farming value chain. And we ensure that the farmers understand much more certainly than ever before just how many crops are actually going to be able to be sent through that farming chain, just in case there is a hiccup and the farm has to do something else to fill some gaps, or provide further transparency to farmers or to their retail customers in the case that they can't fulfill an order, for example, or if maybe they have extra crops, what to do with them. So we're really excited by the world of agriculture. I'll take a quick step back and say who I am a bit more. I started in the agriculture world, working on the amendments and fertilizer space, and I uncovered some benefits from the molecule chitin. And chitin is found in a variety of objects and pieces of matter on the planet, from crustaceans to cricket poop. And cricket poop was the amendment or fertilizer that I got my hands on, literally, and started to study quite a bit and provided that to farmers. So that kind of dipped my toe in the water. And I learned about a lot of other challenges farmers were experiencing from there. And that's really what gave the birth to Ucsc. I got incredibly fascinated with drone technology, sensing, imaging, and the power of analytics. I used to work for a cybersecurity company that focused on analytics and insights, and really just wanted to drive in that direction. I felt it was a much more, a larger opportunity to serve farmers in the world with that type of information. And I will just share a couple of screens just so you can all understand what we do and what it looks like, just very briefly, so that you can see and get a visual, because it speaks, more than 1,000 words. So I'm just going to present these couple of slides. This is a problem slide, actually, that we've uncovered as well. In addition to just helping with throughput of crop production, we're actually able to start identifying with counts of crops how many crops are missing in fields, and to target. Farmers have targets. We can tell them how many they have, so they'll know how many they're missing. And we can start identifying why they're missing those crops. And this represents a very large problem. In rough numbers, the salad bowl crop marketplace is $6 billion in the United States. And, roughly 20% of crops can be lost at any given time in these fields. We're there to help them figure that out as well, in addition to the first value proposition I shared. So what that looks like though, just to give you a visual of what missing crops looks like, I mean, you can get missing crops from a lot of different reasons. And one of them is just stepping on crops, not planting them properly, missing planting them entirely. And these are just some visuals for you to understand that. And then really into the technology, as I mentioned, this is what a field looks like. It seems simple, but those are heads of broccoli. And that is what those heads of broccoli look like with an individual tag on each head of broccoli. And we tag them with our algorithm that we've built. We're a startup and we've bootstrapped this algorithm. We've collected more data that I'm not able to really share at the moment, but our mission is to be able to create a series of algorithms for a series of crops, as well as being able to then tag these crops and count them with the goal of helping the operation provide value to their end customer. So I guess that's really it from me as an introduction. I just want to say thank you. This is a quick image of our dashboard, but I just want to say thank you for having me. I look forward to joining the panelists in an ongoing discussion and the rest of the virtual event.
Great, Russell, that was fantastic. And yeah, I appreciate that overview. So I was thinking for each one of you, maybe we just start with David. I'm curious to learn what developments that you're working on that you feel are going to make the biggest impact of what you're doing. And then, we'll follow that by Manel and then Pauline and then Russell, but maybe just, 1.5 minutes each, because this is a pretty quick panel. But, and also from Manel, what you're working on to encourage that entrepreneurship thinking. So David, take it away.
Sure, thanks, Chris. That's a great question. I know I touched on a number of different technologies that we're thinking about for the island space, really around drones and data analytics and genetic technology and genetic engineering technologies. But I think this was a point that was made maybe a bit earlier in one of the other panels. For me, it's not so much about each one of those as individual tools, because I think there's not going to be any panacea. There's not going to be one tool that's going to solve any one environmental problem, or certainly not our problem of invasive species on islands, but it's integrating all of those into a system, and all these technologies brought together is moving us more towards precision conservation, where we're able to really target both from the data analytics and understanding, but also from the tools in the toolbox to address the problem of being able to integrate all of those into a system and move towards where can we have the biggest return on investment from an environmental standpoint of putting all these things into a system, measuring them over time, and using the exact technology that's going to give us the best return. That's kind of where all of this is driving towards, and I think that's where a lot of emphasis can be put on, is that holistic system approach of which tool should be applied where at the right time.
Yeah, very exciting, and I could see that being used in other places as well. Just in delivering, let's say, rat poison, that has uses in agriculture, for example, which I think are really exciting. So yeah, I'm curious to learn more about how that's progressing. So Manel?
So we're building on the success of Get Virtual, and our plan is to really expand the number of partnerships and diversify it. And Nada has had a tremendous success at that. She's partnering with a number of regional partners. We've already serviced more than 100 businesses, and our model is being reproduced by other universities. So we're not just partnering with local partners, but we're partnering with higher education institutions across the country. So that will increase the number of students that we can put through. We also are using the Open University service to bring students from other UCs into this program. And then our strategy toward UCSC itself is to lower the barrier for participation as much as possible. So by essentially giving credit for classes that students are already taking at other departments, and also for just for opening our programs as much as possible to students without any prerequisites. So again, the game here is to lower barrier for participation, and the incentive is to open up all these opportunities for experiential learning to students enrolled in different majors.
That's great. Yeah, love to hear that. And it's a great path to be on in supporting the students that haven't, they have a major selected, but they have interest in other areas. So I think we can help you on that. Do you have one more thing to say?
Yes, I'd like to add that this essentially, we consider this the consulting track, but we're also building 2 other tracks. So Crown has recruited another entrepreneur in residence. His name is Peter Cote, and he's developing internships in high growth industries. So there, the students would actually do an internship rather than consulting. And we, of course, we have the track for founders as well. And Peter has used to be the liaison for business engagement at UCSC, so he comes with a lot of contacts. And he's a very successful entrepreneur himself.
That's great. Yeah, all those pieces are really coming together nicely. So Pauline.
Yeah, so in terms of our development, we are currently designing the next generation of our product line. So we are right now we are operating a diesel powered kind of self-propelled tractor and a smart implement. And so we're, trying to think about how can we design for more usability, reliability, and precision of operation. And so, yeah, we hope to have a new version of our machine hitting the field by next year, early Q1. So that's, I would say like most of the team is very focused on that. We're obviously then very focused on expanding our business into more regions, reaching out to more growers, and doing so by expanding through our own service center, similarly to what we've built in Salinas, and trying to expand. I mentioned we are starting to do work in Oxnard and Santa Barbara, but we don't really have an office presence there. We're still operating those regions out of Salinas, so just kind of expanding our operation down there, and obviously the desert being a big part of that. We're also very, very keen to explore, similarly to Russell's company, I think there's tremendous power in the agronomic data that our machine collects. In order to, mechanically, we do capture a lot of data points at the crop level, you may say. And so we are, exploring avenues to repackage this data on top of our service. And we have vehicles going across the field once or twice during a cycle. How can we take advantage of that and potentially equip those vehicles with more sensors to collect even more data? So things like that are stuff that keep us up at night and thinking about, expansion and scale. We're also in the process of gathering more funds and growing. Today we're 70 people and growing and hiring across the board, from operations to engineering, G&A. So the team is really expanding, and yeah, lots of stuff to look forward to.
Great. Yeah, with my experiences with my companies, it was never a straight line to get anywhere. There was always pivots that went on, and listening to customers, new information. Hey, can it do this? And that interaction is always very fascinating, and it typically can really drive where you end up spending your resources, because it's not that you have unlimited resources, but it was always the goal to get to revenue as quickly as possible, and then learn and keep moving, and if necessary, raise more money. So all those things are critical for a successful company, and it sounds like you're doing that very well. So Russell.
Thanks, Chris. Again, I think you just gave a good primer for exactly where we're at. We're a business that's essentially got into revenue. We're a seed stage company, and because of that, we're constrained by financials. As you can imagine, we have to work within limited budgets, within limited team sizes. FarmWise being 70, we're a 5-person team, for example. And I think that challenge alone is driving, call it efficiency And I love that about being an entrepreneur and running this team and business within the financial constraints that we have, because every decision is so crucial. And so if I take a step back and I look at how we're providing value and the products that we're creating that will produce the most value, as Pauline mentioned, that FarmWise wants to get more into the data analytics with all of the data they're collecting. I think that's really our only focus, just to reiterate that. But now it's up to us to determine what silo of the farming organization we believe can benefit the most from that data. And there are several silos from, operationally planning to actually planting to producing to harvesting to packaging to selling and shipping. And it's where can our data really, really help the most, the quickest, and I'd say more valuably for the client than us as a business today. I think that's important to note. On a mission to continue to collect a lot of data that we can then continue to compound and force multiply value from. So that's where we're at. And I think, just to speak to the type of products we're building, I mentioned this in my introduction, it's really to help the farm get a sense of their yield predictions, their throughput, be able to plan, and then taking that historical data set and understand, well, if you have a new plot of land, or a plot of land that you'd like to grow X crop on, well, what is the yield of that crop going to look like, right? And being able to answer a question like that in just the planning phase can be monumental, and we're working towards those types of developments. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, well, the data side of it is always kind of where the rubber meets the road. And then, what Pauline, both in Pauline's case and David's case, it's the data, but then there's a physical need, the action needs to be taken. And then once the action is taken, it makes sense to go back and have another look, so once that's the data side once again. So, but it's a whole interesting value stream that you're all doing and helping out in that ecosystem. And, just to put a pitch in for Monterey Bay Dart, we want to be kind of helpful in that process for you all. I had a good conversation with Pauline regarding OSHA. We were down at a farm, Braga, that they were, and Russell was demonstrating at. But, just that there's this, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration, is a big regulator. And so equivalent to what Pauline is doing on the ground, that would be like FAA, so in flying drones. And so that's where, kind of these things intersect, and if there can be some contacts that we can help make on those fronts, we would love to take part in that and assist that, because without those things, you hit a roadblock as an entrepreneur or innovator. And so, so those are things that, we want to hear from you, in which we feel we can really help support. I know David, what he's doing out in islands, they don't have the FAA necessarily out there, but they've got to go to those regulatory folks and say, hey, we're operating safely. These aren't going to fall out of the sky and land on people, so those apply as well. But yeah, we're running out of time right now. We just have until 5 till 12, so it's almost there. But does anybody want to make a final comment on the panel?
I guess I would just add, Chris, for us in innovation, is partnerships is really the driving force behind us, especially as a nonprofit that has a very specific end use case. And I'm sure just accelerating innovation across the field and within the region, really focusing on establishing those long-term partnerships so that we can be building on top of each other, and really accelerating a lot of the solutions that this panel and other panels have talked about, to deliver those services to other groups. And so I think focus on establishing those long enduring partnerships is a real focus for us and hopefully for others.
Great, yeah, we'd love to do that. And Manel? And you're on mute too, Manel, I think.
I think that this really illustrates how we really need to rethink education, right? Because AI is not something that would be traditionally taught in an agricultural school. And it's becoming, your everyday technology. So I think that we really need to focus on a set of key skills that can be applied to pretty much any field, and then follow that with project-based learning. But that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, no,
but I think we need, yeah.
Yeah, breaking down the silos, I find so often is that the engineering is over in this silo and the computer sciences are over here, but making those cross connections is critical. And Pauline, do you want to finish up?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, we are working with, actually a few universities reached out to us to be part of symposium of discussion groups to really think about skills of the future and like what skills are we looking for today, what do we think will be predominant in the future. And we have amazing success stories at the company of people whose family and themselves had been picking apricots on orchards for their entire lives, and now these people came in at the company as operators of the equipment and now moved on to full supervisor and account manager. So really kind of creating just a wonderful career path for themselves, more on the customer management, relationship, sales side, and obviously making a higher wage and all of that. So lots of stuff to say about that, and always happy to chat if you guys want to explore these kind of options. We're always happy to share about the stuff we do and where we think we'll need people in the future.
Yeah, that would be great. And I totally agree with you, is that a lot of people think, aren't you going to take away the farm workers' jobs? But really there's still operators that are needed, maintenance folks are needed, just like in a factory. There's a lot of robotics going on, but people got to take care of the robotics. And so they just don't work by themselves. They need that human assistance, and providing those jobs for those people in rural communities, critical. So that's very exciting. And island conservation does that too. They have a strong feeling towards hiring local people out on these islands and training them. Russell, final words?
Yeah, my final words are mostly just to say thank you and for bringing people like ourselves together to encourage collaboration and conversation. I think that's what's required to take the next step forward. I think there's a lot of different companies in agriculture specifically doing a lot of different things. Some are creating products to solve problems. Some are finding problems and creating products. I think that we all need to continue to communicate and really start to address the challenges that farmers are facing by getting our hands dirty. And I know this is a virtual panel, but I would also encourage us to meet personally. And I think, Pauline, I didn't have a chance to catch you at the Braga on-site farm tour, but those farm tours and getting clients involved in the discussion and having vendors and early stage and late stage companies all coming together, I think everybody can always agree that more transparency will lead to accelerated benefits. And I'm just very happy to be a proponent of that and encourage it and continue to work with everybody here. So thanks for bringing it together, Monterey Bay Dart and Chris.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for participating, and we'll move on now to our final keynote with UC A&R's Glenda Humiston. So passing it over to Michael. Thanks again.
You're on mute, Michael.
Let's try that again. So thanks, Chris, and thanks to all the panelists. I think that theme of partnership is really a through line through this entire event, and we hope that people feel inspired to reach out and find ways to work with everyone that has spoken. So moving on to our final presentation for the morning, I am very pleased to welcome Glenda Humiston, the Vice President of UC Agriculture and Natural Resources. She does amazing work there, supporting research and programming throughout the entire UC system that safeguards and enhances agricultural systems, food security, as well as protecting the environment and natural resources in the state. So a huge mandate. I'm going to give a shortened version of Dr. Humiston's very lengthy bio just to give her optimal time to speak here. She was appointed Vice President of UC A&R in August 3rd, 2015, and she came to the role with over 25 years of experience working on public policy development and program implementation supporting sustainability. And that work included Peace Corps work in Tunisia. She also served at President Clinton's appointment as Deputy Undersecretary for Natural Resources and Environment at USDA. And then again for President Obama as California State Director at the US Department of Agriculture, Rural Development. She holds a PhD from UC Berkeley in environmental science, policy and management with research focused on US Farm Bill policy. It is my great pleasure to turn the floor over to Dr. Humiston.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Thrilled to be here today. I'm going to share my screen and share a few slides. There we go. So that should have, yes, there we go. So again, really thrilled to be here today. Hope I'm not between folks and lunch, but being the keynote at the end of a conference is always a challenging thing. But if nothing else, I do have some very pretty pictures. And I'd like to share a few kind of key ideas about where we can go as we try to move forward on this. Because it's really an exciting time to be working on these issues around drones and robots and all the potential for technology to help us with things. And here in California especially, California is a global leader in the food, agriculture, and technology fields. You look around the state at all the different resources we have, the startup companies, the new technologies, new ways to utilize this to help make our lives better. It's truly phenomenal. And nowhere is that more true than agriculture and natural resources. We're still pursuing a great many ways of how to utilize this type of technology. Today, we're focusing on drones. Drones are very exciting. My folks love to work with them, as do a lot of the farmers and natural resources managers we work with. This is just a couple examples, and I'm sure probably over the last 2 or 3 days, you've seen even cooler pictures of drones. But in agriculture, we're finding a lot of different uses for them. This is just examples of utilizing them to deliver payloads into the field, particularly chemicals, which actually helps us micro pinpoint delivery so that we're reducing use of chemicals in fields while also not compressing soil that can later cause soil erosion. So use of this equipment could have many multiple benefits. Additionally, just collecting data. This is a workshop we gave a few years ago over in the San Joaquin Valley, where we were looking at the results of data collected from literally hundreds of drone flights around almond orchards and other fields, where we were trying to better understand how water stress affected crop stress before it actually created that crop stress. And via a lot of imagery that you can use from drones, you can get extremely detailed information and see where a problem is developing before it actually occurs and does damages to a plant. And this is particularly important for perennial crops where trees and vines are a multi-year investment before you even get a crop off of them in many cases.
Pardon me, Glenda. Glenda, this is Josh Metz.
Sure.
Sorry for interrupting, but you're giving a great talk, and we are seeing your presenter view, and we would love to see the larger view, I think. For the
okay, well,
so if you
let me see
make
how
that adjustment, I think that would be wonderful, and then we would continue on.
So I'm telling it to do the slide show.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's fine. Does that solve it? Because what I'm seeing on my screen is just the slide itself.
We're still back on the same look.
If you're using multiple monitors.
Carry on if it's too much.
No, I'm only on one monitor.
Okay.
I'm only on one monitor. Let me try it from up here.
There you go.
Oh, here, unclick that. There we go. Let's try it now. I didn't know that was clicked. How's that?
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for saying
You're a
something
pro.
before I kept going through that. We're all learning new things about Zoom every time we're on it. So as I was saying, many
and now we're
different
not
ways-
hearing you.
Okay.
Apologies for that.
I have not muted myself.
Yeah, I'm able to hear.
Yeah, we
can
can
hear
hear
it too.
fine.
Okay. So I'm going to keep on going. As I said, we're all learning different things
Still
about
no
Zoom.
sound, I'm sorry.
Josh, I think it's just on your machine. We can hear it fine.
Right. It's just Josh's.
Can you
I'll
help
check.
us here? Oh, you can hear. Okay, great.
Okay. So I'm going to keep going. Okay. Okay. Nothing like Zoom for us to learn new lessons on. As I was saying, a lot of great things we can do with drones in agriculture, collecting data, etc. And it's not just agriculture. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the many uses of drones in natural resources. But the reality is there's so many different ways drones can help us understand what is going on in remote areas, in fire areas where it would be dangerous to have people go into those situations. In fact, in some fires, they're now using drones to deliver micro bits of water where a little hotspot really can make a difference in highly inaccessible areas. Satellite imagery is also part of this, which drones can then help ground truth. Understanding fire. This is some mapping from the recent Caldor fire that clearly shows those green areas of pre-fire management, thinning, controlled burns, etc., made a huge difference to the firefighters when they were trying to protect that particular community. It made all the difference in the world. But as we go on, what I want to do is just highlight a few things we're doing. And first of all, just say how excited we are to be partnering with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership and DART on the Build Back Better application that was just sent in for Uplift Central Coast. We're extremely excited about that. It's part of an ongoing partnership we've had over there with our drone camp. I think many of you may have just attended drone camp recently. It was unfortunately online this year rather than in person. We're hoping next year is back in person. But as you can see, this is a multi-campus UC and CSU system partnership along with several other partners to provide these short courses on how to use drones, the skills and knowledge you need for mapping, data collection, and a host of other activities. This is one of the many deliverables that our statewide program, Informatics and GIS, IGIS, provides to not just drone camp, etc., but to our entire UC system and other partners. In fact, if you go to their website, they have a host of different services and interest in partnering with different people. We're working on a lot of different mapping exercises around the state related to agriculture, natural resources, climate change, endangered species, and how to utilize that information to support decision-making, better decision-making, which at the end of the day is what's really critical. IGIS is one of 13 statewide programs and institutes that we have at ANR. So just a moment of a little internal advertising here, but we really are interested in partnering with people going forward. So these 13 programs run the gamut of water resources, economics, nutrition, integrated pest management, organic farming, and several programs which make use of volunteers. We have almost 20,000 volunteers around the state in 4-H, master gardeners, and our California naturalists. And frankly, they are a huge source of staffing, volunteer staffing, as we are doing more and more citizen science, participatory science on collecting information to support our research efforts. And some of them, frankly, are already using drones and other technology as well. This ties into our cooperative extension network scattered around the state our research extension centers, and then of course our research at our Ag Experiment Station campuses. The other thing that is really pertinent to today's audience is our VINE, the Verde Innovation Network for Entrepreneurs, that we kicked off 5 years ago, where we're really trying to make sure that research that comes out of not only UC, but UC in partnership with other public and private partners gets its way to commercialization. How do we make sure that happens? So we're looking at focusing on how to bring regions together to make sure their resources are leveraged and collaborations happen, large grant proposals together, how to make sure we're standing up the innovation opportunities, incubation hubs, et cetera, and just really accelerate getting that new science into technology, into commercialization. To do that, we've got several things. I'm just going to give you a couple examples. Down at our Kearney Rec, where drones again and other robotics are part of an example of a consortium for advanced sorghum phenomics. Sorghum is a huge crop around the world that has the ability to be an extremely important food source that can be grown in drought-prone regions. It's an extremely hardy plant. We're trying to work with a host of private sector partners, Berkeley National Lab, the ARPA-E, Terra, et cetera. NASA is part of this, to really take sorghum to its nth degree, improve the plant, improve the production practices, improve the harvest, improve our understanding of how the whole system works, et cetera. We're also working very closely with a variety of private sector companies who are developing this technology to get it tested in the field. Those 9 research and extension centers I mentioned around the state are located in very different ecosystems and bioregion climatic types, so that we can really do a great deal of research and do side-by-side comparisons of equipment. This is critical because for a lot of agriculture in particular, farmers are constantly hearing from companies, oh, I've got the better technology, please buy mine. And this technology can cost thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement and put into place. And most folks just don't want to make that kind of an investment unless they really know it's going to be working. When we can do test beds like this, where we actually test this equipment side by side and then produce a very unbiased report on what we found, basically a consumer reports type of information, it's really valuable to the public and something that we're doing more of with more and more companies. But I do want to say, and this is a critical point, and I know it's something the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership's been very active in, along with other partners around the state. It's going to be extremely hard for us to make full use of this new technology, be it drones, remote sensing, robotics, mapping, computer support, decision-making, whatever. It's going to be extremely hard for us to make full utilization of those technologies if we don't have good access to broadband statewide. And that's still a huge issue in much of rural California in particular. We literally have farm fields that have very poor, if any, access to broadband. And that makes it impossible, really, in many ways, to utilize a lot of these technology, particularly remote sensing. So that's something we've all got to start working on a little bit, is how to really improve that. Once we do prove that, then I just want to share this example of some of what we're doing right now to really move these issues forward. We were thrilled last year to coordinate a grant proposal with the partners you see there at the bottom, both UC's Berkeley and Davis, along with Illinois and Cornell, our U.S. Department of Agriculture's Ag Research Service, and of course ours at UC Ag and Natural Resources. We put in a proposal and received a $20 million grant from NIFA and from NSF, the National Science Foundation, to really look at artificial intelligence in food systems. How do we really harness the potential of artificial intelligence for everything from breeding to production, processing, distribution, nutrition, people, how we manage resources, people, water, power, energy, all of it. And how do we really harness the power that could be here to find answers, find solutions, and move those forward? Because as we deal with climate change, it's getting harder and harder to manage not just agricultural production, but water resources, ecosystem services, climatic changes happening throughout the state, the nation, and the globe for that matter. And we're going to have to find ways to mitigate, adapt, and find solutions to that change, as we also find solutions to reverse climate change, get us back into healthier temperatures moving forward. So I'm gonna close this out because I wanted to leave us plenty of time to actually have some conversation about this. I'm hoping we have a little bit of dialogue, but really in closing, let me just say, research and extension, our UC, but also our other partners, CSU system, we're working closely with community colleges, other land grant higher education institutions, private sector partners, government agencies. We've all got to start working together more than ever to find the answers to these big issues. Our food and nutrition systems are very fragile. Climate change is upending everything. The economy has huge disconnects. I think most of us remember a year ago, March, when COVID first hit. We had empty shelves in grocery stores at the same time we had farmers plowing crops underground because the marketing systems, the supply chains were in complete disarray. We've got to figure out how to handle that kind of upheaval with more nimble, flexible solutions, as well as a disaster response. And this gets into solutions for worker and community well-being, how industries recover, how they're more resilient, how we can get market competitiveness for California as a whole, not just our urban areas, not just the Silicon Valleys and the LAs and the Bay Area, but rural California too, which often has been very far behind in economic recovery. It's all about finding those urban-rural solutions, the ag and environmental, and as my California Stewardship Network members like to say, our triple bottom line solutions: people, planet, and prosperity. We've got to start focusing on that, working together and getting these solutions. I think drones, robots, technology are going to help us get there, but only if we have these other pieces in place. So with that, I'll close out. I've got my contact info here. I've also included contact info for our Chief Innovation Officer, who some of you know, Gabe Ucsc. He's a great guy to get a hold of for those of you that do want to partner with us on anything around innovation. We've got some very exciting projects going on around the state right now, and looking forward to actually getting some new projects going over in the Monterey Bay area as well. So with that, I'm going to stop share and bring us back out so that we can hopefully have a little bit of dialogue.
Excellent. Thank you, Glenda. Before we go to the questions, I'm just going to put another shameless plug for the amazing UC A&R drone camp. What people might not understand is that it's not only open to people within the UC system, it's open to everyone. And this past year, we had people from around the world, people doing really interesting work with whale entanglement in Alaska and other projects looking to learn more about drones. And the event itself is very unique in that it is, unlike a lot of programs that are commercially available, this is focused on research skills. So people who come here gain hands-on piloting experience, but also data processing, data gathering, and broad analytics skills. So an amazing program that Glenda's team at UC&R started years ago.
Michael, thank you. I see I got a couple questions in the chat already. And I love the question about 4-H. We actually have drone projects in 4-H. It's one of the fastest growing projects in 4-H, along with robotics, and something, frankly, I would love to work with you all to get more going. We've got curriculum. and where we can find local sponsors to actually get equipment into the hands of kids, and particularly kids in underserved communities, I think we could get a lot more young people engaged with this field. So yeah, 4-H does have a lot of opportunities. As I said, curriculum projects already designed. We just need to get it into the hands of kids and get them active with it. And I see Josh actually asked me to comment further on how we are increasing our presence in the Central Coast. So we are going to be making an announcement next month concerning a cohort of community and economic development cooperative extension advisors around the state. But if I can get you all to promise a little secrecy, I will admit that one of those positions is going to be in the Monterey Bay area, focused on ag technology, specifically how we can use drones and similar technology to advance. We'll probably focus on ag tech initially, but certainly that person will be tying into our IGIS, to our fire advisors, to other folks that might be using this technology statewide. Because that's the beauty of our system being statewide, is that our advisors all talk to each other, they all share info with each other, and with our partners such as you, and partners like you can then tell us what research is needed, how you want to work with us on it, and help us then get the word out to communities so they can make use of that research. That's the two questions I saw in chat. Any others that folks want to bring up or comment on?
Yeah, one other quick question. If you could talk a little more specifically about ways companies who are interested in partnering with you and the amazing research that you're doing, and maybe a couple examples or one example of a company that has partnered with your team.
That's a great question. You know, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and I'm going to go over here into the chat to everyone, and I'm going to put in Gabe Yautz's contact info. Yeah, there we go. So a great answer is I specifically created a Chief Innovation Officer. I think it's 5 years now. Gabe Yautz, his contact info is in the chat. To help us do exactly that. We've got a 100+ year tradition of working very closely with farmers on agricultural practices, with natural resource managers on things like grazing and rangeland and forests. But one of the things we've been trying to really enhance and expand since I got here 5 or 6 years ago is how we really interact with the private sector around community and economic development, technology development, commercialization, and really explore opportunities to partner on that. So one of the things our UC Board of Regents recently did that I'm very excited about, the Regents had a task force that looked at how the University of California handles the development and management of intellectual property. I think one of the things some of you would be very quick to kind of beat us up on a little bit, and rightfully so, is that UC has a tendency to be kind of grabby about intellectual property and not always really easy to work with as a partnership. The Regents saw that, they studied it, they made some recommendations that we're now implementing, and we're really looking at doing more cooperative research and development agreements, CRADAs, where all the partners come to the table, and in this case, academia, government, and private sector. We've already got a few of those going on, in particular over in the Fresno region. But where we come together and we say, okay, here's the resources we're bringing to the table. Here's the intellectual property we're developing. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. Here's what we think is a fair contribution and a fair return on our investments. And we agree to that up front, and then we can work together. And you don't have some of the challenges and fights you have down the road. So that's one way people can work with us. Get a hold of us. Let us know you want to work with us via Gabe. You certainly can reach out to me too, but he'll probably get back to you faster. I'll be real honest. And also talk via him, talk to our research extension centers about whether or not you might want to actually do research at some of our facilities. It's really nice to have facilities that have equipment, support staff, laboratories, greenhouses, et cetera, where you can do the kind of research that might be more challenging to do on private property or a private farmer who's trying to make a living and doesn't always want to change their practices just to make research happen. So that's why we have those facilities out there. Josh has put something else in there earlier, drone applications. Can you talk further about role in advancing education application? Okay, yeah. A lot is happening around forestry and wildfire. I didn't get into that a great deal today because we're further along in the ag tech, there's no doubt about it. But a lot of what we've done with ag tech is very transferable to what we're doing with natural resources management, always has been, and now forestry and fire. So IGES and our forest advisors work very closely with the UC San Diego Supercomputer Center on how we can use remote sensing, drones, satellite imagery, a host of other information sources and big data to better understand when fires are moving, like real-time fire movement, so that we can help keep firefighters informed and ahead of it, but to also understand where fire is likely to happen. Where do we have overgrowths of too much thick forest with dead trees? That's a very likely spot we need to target pre-fire management activities on. Where do we have, how do we understand how wind patterns move fire and understand that so we can see where maybe we need to prioritize activities to protect a community or some very important facilities, you know, like power lines or water storage, conveyance, infrastructure. So there's a lot going on with that right now. It's all about the technology. It's about the data collection. It's about the data analysis. And then last but not least, new ways to take all of that information and move it into better decision support. Because if you don't use that information to make better decisions, then we're spending a lot of money for questionable purposes. Josh, did that answer your question, or can I keep going? I know we're running out of time here. I want to respect your time. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. So let me just close again by saying how excited I am to be here. I'm excited about partnering with you guys in the past and in the future. I think that we can get a lot of really great work done. And if you have any new ideas or opportunities for us to partner with you, please don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or my Chief Innovation Officer, Gabe Ucsc. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Glenda, for that fantastic presentation, really outlining the opportunities and resources that UCANR has available for everyone in the audience. So definitely, I hope that, again, inspires you to reach out and further establish new partnerships. So that brings us to the end of our program, virtual program this morning. We are going to be gathering in person starting at 2 p.m. and we'll be able to take a tour of the airspace integration facility, and we'll see some exciting things, including the Josh Resnick's drone that he showed in his earlier presentation. So hope you can join us. I'm going to drop the address again in the chat. There is a security gate you'll need to go through when you arrive. So we hope that all of you are able to join us and continue the networking. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us for these 3 epic days of presentations and information on the DART space and on the many exciting things going on here and around the world. We hope that you will join us again next year for the next annual DART Symposium. So see all of you who are here in person this afternoon, and we hope to hear from all of you virtually very soon as well. So thanks again, and see you next year.